3rd of June 2020 for Babergh District Council's Planning Committee. I welcome you all here this morning and to the members of the public, which will come to you all in turn, and we will turn your mics on at the appropriate times for the visitors. Welcome to this meeting of the Planning Committee. May I first of all remind you of some of the domestic arrangements. Please ensure that the microphones are turned off when not in use, that you do not interrupt other speakers, that if you wish to speak, point of order, declaration and/or interest, or request an adjournment, you may indicate this box. This should not be used for any other purpose or conversation during the meeting. Members are reminded that they should not have alternative communication lines open other than Skype chats, and that if you are contacted by a third party during this meeting, you should bring this to the legal advisor's attention. That if you are attending the meeting to speak and persistently interrupt the meeting, you may be asked to leave. If a member of the committee is conducted by a third party during the meeting, that they must also bring this to the chair's attention as soon as possible. If members do lose connections to the meeting, that they must contact the member support officer, Mandy Smith, immediately. You do all have her number at the side with you, so you can just phone her and we will then get you reconnected. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be recorded where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you will be deemed by the council to have consented to being recorded. By entering this meeting as a speaker, you are also consenting to being recorded by the council and to the possible use of those sound recordings for webcasting and/or training purposes. The council, members of the public and press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and press are not lawfully excluded. The introductions, we have Stephen Stroud, who's the Strategic Projects and Delivery Manager. We all know him as today's Chief Planning Officer. Mark Russell, the Area Planning Manager. Elizabeth Flood, which is the Case Officer for, I believe, the first one, and Samantha Summons, the Case Officer for the second one, or the other way round. Ian Dupre's the Planning Lawyer, who's the Solicitor, and Robert Carmichael, the Governance Officer. I will now move to the agenda. I'm going to ask for apologies for absence and or substitutions. Rob, can you please do a roll call? And he'll tell you anyway.
Thank you, Chair. If you just reply with good morning or whatever is appropriate. So Councillor Sue Ayres.
Good morning, everyone.
Councillor Melanie Barrett.
Good morning.
Councillor Peter Beer.
Present.
Councillor David Busby.
Morning.
Councillor John Hinton.
Morning.
Councillor Lee Jameson.
Morning.
Councillor Mary McLaren.
Good morning.
Councillor Adrian Osborne.
Good morning, all. Present.
Councillor Alison Owen.
Good morning.
Councillor Lee Parker.
Present.
Councillor Stephen Plum.
Here I am. Good morning.
And the ward members of Councillor John Nunn.
Morning.
Councillor Elizabeth Malvisi.
Morning.
And finally, Councillor Alistair McCraw, who may not...
Present,
but
not for the first application.
Yep. Brilliant, thank you. Everyone is here, Chair, and I can confirm all the public speakers are here as well.
Thank you very much for that, Rob. Item 2, to receive declarations of interest by members or non-interest. Are there any to declare? I think you have to do a roll call again, Rob.
Yes, Chair, sorry. So, Councillor Ayres,
It's yes or no.
No, I haven't anything to declare.
Councillor Barrett,
The property at Brantham, I know the owners or the former owners, but other than that, nothing to declare.
Councillor Beer,
No, nothing to declare.
Councillor Busby,
No.
Councillor Hinton,
No.
Councillor Jameson,
No.
Councillor McLaren,
No.
Councillor Osborne,
No declaration.
Councillor Owen, Councillor Parker,
Nothing to declare.
and Councillor Plum.
No.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Item 3, to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 30th of April. You've seen these. Are there any points regarding the accuracy of the minutes? Okay. Then I need to have a proposer, please, and a seconder.
I propose they're accepted.
Thank you. That's Councillor Ayres, and seconder,
I propose that, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Osborne. Thank you. Rob, you need to do a roll call again.
Thank you, Chair. So if you could please respond with for, against, or abstain. So Councillor Ayres,
For.
Councillor Barrett,
For.
Councillor Beer,
For.
Councillor Busby,
For.
Councillor Hinton,
For.
Councillor Jameson,
For.
Councillor McLaren,
For.
Councillor Osborne, Councillor Owen,
For.
Councillor Parker,
For.
and Councillor Plum. Thank you, Chair. That is carried.
Thank you very much. We'll move to the minutes of the meeting has been confirmed and will be signed at the next practical opportunity. Okay. To receive notification of any petitions. Rob?
None
Do you have
received,
any?
Chair.
Thank you. Item 5 is site inspections. Officers, are there any site inspection requests? I take that as a no then. The silence.
Not yet, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Members, are there any site inspection requests? Councillor Owen, didn't you want to do one? No?
Hello. Yes. Sorry, I didn't realise I had to put it in here. It's for the you've got me all going now because I wasn't expecting this.
Well, I think there may be time. This is for the one at Sudbury on the industrial estate. I don't think it's due to come up at the next meeting unless an officer can correct me on that. And if that's the case, you could have a word with the officers after the meeting and bring it to the next meeting.
If I may, Chair. Sorry, Chair. Yeah, we discussed this at the delegation panel. We have to go back to Councillor Owens with some more information, and then we'll revisit it on a future date.
Lovely. I know she had mentioned it to me, so that's fine. So, Councillor Owen, after you've had your discussions with Officer Russell, you can then decide what you want to do and go forward there. Okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Lovely. Thank you. So, members, are there any other site inspection requests? No? Thank you. Then we'll move on to item 6, which is the plan and applications, and they'll be taken in the following order. Land south of Tamage Road, Acton. I will now invite the case officer, Elizabeth Flood, to introduce the application to the committee. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just share my screen.
Lovely. Yes, that's up.
Yeah, you can see that. Okay, so there are no late papers for this application, but we are aware that members of the committee have received emails from both the developer and the objectors. This is a motion for the erection of 100 dwellings, vehicular access and open space. It was first brought to committee on the 4th of March 2020. A motion to approve the application was lost 7-4, but no motion to refuse the application was presented. The application was deferred due to the following issues. The affordable housing should be within no more than groups of 15. Members wanted to see additional bungalows and a decrease in the 4-bedroom dwellings. They wanted to see a decrease in the on-plot triple parking, and concern was raised relating to the proximity of the play area to the attenuation basin. Since we've revised plans, which will be discussed, and then just a little bit of clarification on the report in paragraph 2.4, where it says Watfield Road frontage, sorry, that should say Tamage Road frontage.
Can you give the page number as well? That would be helpful.
I don't think I've got page numbers on my report, I'm afraid, Chair.
Well, 2.4 then. Hopefully members can follow it.
28.
Page 28. Thank you.
Okay, so this is the site. You can see this is the Tamage Road here. Vicarage Lane goes along here, and Sudbury Road goes here. So it's surrounded by the free roads, and this is the old vicarage here, which is the grade 2 listed building. And you can also see just on the edge the corner of the school here, Acton Primary School. Okay, this is the site plan. You can see it. There are quite a number of hedges and trees on the edges of the development site, some of which aren't within the site, here and here. Okay, this is the constraints map. You can see the old vicarage, the grade 2 listed building in this location, and then the built up area boundary skirts along Tamage Road and then Vicarage Lane. Okay, this is the revised layout following the deferral at committee. I will just point out the revisions. So the affordable housing has now been split into 3 groups. This group of 15 here, and then another group of 10 here, and another group of 10 here. In addition, the parking arrangements changed slightly, and I'll show you that on the parking plan. The play area has been moved slightly further away from the attenuation basin. Again, I can show you that on another plan. And there's some additions of some bungalows. So some additional bungalows that I'll show you. Okay, this is the parking. So following the concerns raised at the previous committee, the developer has removed all the triple parking, so all the 2 parking spaces and garages. So all the garages with the pink dots are no longer included in the numbers, in the parking numbers. They're just there for storage. And additional parking has been allocated for these houses down here. In addition, some over here have been removed. So all the triple parking has been removed, and some additional visitor parking has been provided. The visitor parking is in purple, and there are 204 residential parking spaces and 26 visitor parking spaces. Okay, this is the tenure plan. So this is just to show you where the affordable housing is located now. So the red dots show affordable rented housing, and the blue dots show shared ownership. So as you can see, they're now in 3 separate clusters. A cluster of here of 15 dwellings, a cluster here of 10 dwellings, and a cluster here of another. This is the massing plan. So following the committee, 4 bungalows have been added, and the 2.5-storey dwellings have been removed. So you can see the 4 2-bed bungalows are located, 3 here and 1 here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is a drawing showing the attenuation basin. So concern was raised regarding the proximity of the play area to the attenuation basin. So just to explain it, this is the play area here, which has been moved slightly, and the developer has confirmed that it would be fenced. This is the attenuation basin, which is proposed not to be fenced, but the profile has been changed from 1 in 3 to 1 in 4, and you can see here that it's quite a low profile. And the little area in blue, this would be an area which would be permanently in water of up to 3 centimetres. So there would be 3 centimetres of water and planting in this area to provide infiltration, to keep the water clean. And then the rest of the attenuation basin would be generally dry unless there were periods of high rainfall when it would fill up. Again, this shows the attenuation basin. So this is the area which would have permanently standing water of about 3 centimetres. You can see the play area here with the proposed fence. The developers have also proposed more trees and planting in this location to discourage children from, accessing Tamage Road. There will also be the hedge. This shows the landscaping plan of another corner of the site, and you can see that the overhead wires are along here, which is one of the reasons why the play area wasn't relocated to this position, which is the other area of open space directly south of the attenuation basin. There's another landscaping plan. The landscaping officer has asked for some additional location, and the developer has agreed to look at that could be dealt with by condition. Third landscaping plan, this is again the south of the site, where you can see the existing trees. And finally, this is this corner here. So this is quite a sensitive corner because it's the corner closest to the listed building, and it's proposed to have brick walls in this location rather than closely boarded fence, and some trees to help lessen the impact. There's also trees outside of the site in this location. Okay, this is just some elevations. So this is the affordable units. Again, this is a terrace of affordable housing units. This is just to show you that they are generally tenure blind, so there aren't any differences in materials than the market housing. This is an example of one of the market housing. The design is generally sort of arts and crafts, so you get these little details here. And again, this is the bungalow. So these are the new bungalows that have been added. You can see that they're 2-bedroom bungalows. Okay, so these are the new street scenes. So this is A to A is from here to here. So you get some of the affordable housing, which is in this location. So this is a terrace and then 2 blocks of 2 flats each. Then this is the market housing, a mixture of semi-detached and detached dwellings, again more market housing. This is street scene B, which is from here to here, so you can see that. And then this is street scene C, which is from here to here, and you can see the new bungalows have been added here and here. And again, this is street scene D, which is location to this location, and again you can see the additional bungalows here. Onto the photos. This is looking down Sudbury Road to development, so you can just see the development on Tamage Road here. So the field that would be developed is in this location. Okay, this is looking through a gap in the hedgerow onto the site. So again, Tamage Road development is here. You can see the field. Again, this is looking along the hedgerows, which will be retained along here, quite mature. Looking back across the site, so this is the corner with of Tamage Road and Vicarage Lane here. Again, so this is Tamage Road, looking across the site from the corner of Tamage Road and Sudbury Road. So this is the entirety of the site. Some of this hedge will be removed for the visibility displays, but be relocated further back. But much of this hedging along the side will be retained. Hedgerow. Again, this is looking along the side with the hedgerow to be retained. Okay, this is Tamage Road, so this is the site. The entrance would be in this location, just after the junction. So you can see here, these are the houses on Tamage Road. This is just to show you the junction of Sudbury Road with the High Street, because there has been concern relating to the highways, in particular this junction. As you can see, the visibility displays aren't what would be acceptable now, but this is clearly a historic road, and you can see there have been some double yellow lines have been put there to allow as best visibility as possible, and the Highway Authority haven't objected to the development. Again, this is looking up Sudbury Road onto the High Street, so you can again see the sort of substandard visibility. Okay. This is concerns being raised regarding the landscape impact of the development. You can just see on the edge there, that is the Long Melford Church. So there are some long views, particularly in this corner here, looking over the site. And again, this is slightly further up through a gap of the hedgerow, and you can on the edge and the long distance view. As you move up, however, even these were taken in winter. The hedgerow is quite strong, so the views become much more filtered. And as you go along further, so as you go along here, you start to see the view context with the modern housing along Tamage Road. This shows the public footpath, which is located just in this location, and goes this way. Again, this is Tamage Road. Looking along the road, this is the existing hedgerow, some of which would need to be removed and replaced. This is looking along Sudbury Road. This hedgerow and planting would be retained. And that's the end. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. That's very full. Now, members, I shall ask you if there's any points that you'd like clarified by the case officer, not debate, but just points. And I've got one, which I'll start off with, Elizabeth. Slide 14 referred to a wall or walls, and I think they were on the corner. Who will be looking after them? Are they in the ownership of some of the, or is this wall going to be sort of looked after by whoever?
No, these would be garden walls.
They
It's
would
just
be-
rather than putting fencing up, which is generally what would be proposed on that corner, which is particularly sensitive. The boundary would be walls rather than a fencing.
That's excellent. That's answered it. It's just that I know some estates where they put walls between, say, garage blocks and things. They've disappeared. 10 years later, the walls fall down and nobody's responsible. So that's fine. That's answered that. Members, is there any other points of clarification?
Can I come in there, Chair?
Councillor Ayres, yes?
Yes, I wondered, and I've mentioned it in other things. I found out crinkle crankle walls are cheaper to build than ordinary. Maybe a crinkle crankle wall would be good.
This is points of clarification. Is it a crinkled wall or not, Elizabeth?
No, it's just a straight wall.
Yeah. Okay. Any other points of clarification? No. Thank you very much then. We'll move on. We now have public speakers here. I will ask the parish council representative, I think it's Councillor Graham Round, is that correct? You have 3 minutes, sir, in which to address the committee. At the end of that, if you remain online, I'll see if there's any questions for you.
Thank you.
When you're ready,
just so you can hear me, okay?
Yeah, Rob will tell you when to start and he'll put the timer up. Okay, thank you. When you're ready, sir.
Okay, Acton Council continue to unanimously recommend refusal of this application. Part 3 of the officer report attempts to describe the application site and its surroundings. The few lines of text omit the massive recreational contribution the site has and its surroundings provide to the hinterland village of Acton. There is no mention of the public sweeping country views and the recreational value of the walk-in routes. The landscape officer raises concerns regarding the visual impact of the development. The case officer seems to have a solution that just to be and plant some more trees to hide the development from view. The misleading report by the applicant's landscape consultants describes the site as an arable field having existing dwellings on all 4 sides, when in fact there is open countryside on 3 sides. We wonder, are they really surveying the correct location? If the application site is developed, it will sit like a carbuncle on the outer edge of the hinterland village and will not form a natural extension to the village. Acton residents produced an extensive landscape, visual impacts and infrastructure assessment document. We believe officers have totally dismissed this important document. The document details the extensive harm this development will cause. Some of these are the surrounding landscape and rural character of the outer edge of the village. Harm on Tamage Road, owned by the parish, was planted and has been maintained for some 30 years by the parish council. The hedge clearly defines the edge of the village and provides a demarcation between the rural landscape and the built environment. The document shows the importance of protecting the enjoyment of the rural walk from the village centre to public right-of-way 15, with many sweeping landscape views across the site. The walk from the centre of the village has an incredible high recreational value that should not be destroyed forever. 32 pages of pictures and text describe the rural scene and the harm caused by the proposed development, massively tilting the scales to a refusal decision when assessed against policy CS02 and CS11. It's difficult to place weight on the scales to support the approval. Officers mentioned the benefit to the village, the creation of a green open space and play area. The village already has a village green. It has a playground and a junior football area in the centre of the village. It has a very large sports green beside the village hall. So really there is no deficit of open space in the area. The new proposed open space is not required and is outside of the village boundary. Officers state that 106 payments and seal payments as a benefit to the local community. But these payments merely try to mitigate the shortcomings of the application. They provide no existing community or local infrastructure. It's not clear that Babergh policy for seal payments has been properly assessed and reported. Members, today, representatives from the residents group and our ward councillors will tell you more about infrastructure deficits, road safety issues and the poor contrived moves to mitigate the lack of education places which encourage trust. Assessed together, they result in the balance of approve or refuse falling heavily on the refuse side. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Councillor Round, for that. Members, have you any questions for Councillor Round of Acton Parish Council? Anybody? No?
Yes, please, Mr. Chairman.
Maloney?
Thank you.
Councillor Barrett, sorry.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just wanted to clarify with, is it Councillor Graham? You mentioned about the loss of the walk. Can you just, with the assistance perhaps of the map on site, just describe where, if there's a walk that is then going to not be available?
It's the contribution the site makes to the walk, and the walk comes from the centre of the village along a pathway, a rural pathway called Jennings Way, and then Jennings Way meets up to Tamage and Vicarage Lane. They're both seen as the perimeter roads of the village. So once you pass through that, you're into open countryside, and mostly people will walk through Jennings Way around the site, or they will certainly join public right-of-way 15, which takes you across to the airfield. And it's a rail walk because it's on the side of the village into the countryside. So it's a piece of countryside that's really associated with the village and is used highly. And it has some incredible views across the site wherever you are. I mean, officers have picked up a couple, but there's many more.
Thank you. Councillor Hinton.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question on, have the parish council done a wildlife survey or anything else in that area to find out just what sort of impact this urbanisation of the countryside will have? We've heard how they're proposing brick walls rather than fences, and yet in another application we've got recommendations from the environmental officer that we should be putting up fences with hedgehog holes in. So there seems to be a rather sort of eclectic view of wildlife and its importance.
Well, in our assessment document, or the residents' assessment document, they showed, small holes in the existing hedge where you can see that wildlife do move from the site onto the hedgerows and use the hedgerows for coverage, and that takes them right round the perimeter of the site of the village at that end of the village. So it is important, and we're still not clear what parts of the hedge are going to be removed and replaced. And in fact, it's the parish council's hedge. So I don't understand why they believe they have permission to remove it.
Thank you for that. We'll ask the officers about the hedge at the end of this question. But Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, Councillor Round. Councillor Round, as you might know, many of the decisions that this committee arrive at are informed either by the existence or the emergence of a neighbourhood plan. I notice that Acton doesn't have one currently. Intention to be undertaking a neighbourhood plan process?
I've just recently joined the parish council, and that's something that I will certainly be trying to push through, because it's something I think that's really missing.
Thank you. Any other questions to the objector? No. Thank you very much for that. Thank you. Can I just ask, oh dear, I've forgotten the name. Elizabeth, can you just clarify the hedge? The objector said that the hedge wasn't in the ownership of the applicant, and that. Can you just clarify that point for us?
Yeah, I can confirm that's being maintained by the parish sort of long term, but the actual land is highway land, so it is within the highway authority's ownership, and it can be developed so the hedge can be removed and the visibility displays put in there.
Thank you. That clears that part. Right, we'll move on then. That was the parish council. I will now ask the objector, John Purser, to speak. You have 3 minutes, sir, in which committee. When you're ready, you may start.
I'm ready when you are, please.
Yes. Okay, now then, thank you.
Good morning. Government Historic Environment Advice from 2019 states non-designated heritage assets having a degree of heritage significance merit consideration in planning decisions. This extends policy CN06. A qualifying heritage building was part of an objection in September 2019, but was omitted from Heritage Department consideration, it seems. In the officer's report, it's a single dwelling. It's one of the oldest houses in Acton, late 1700s, the servants' quarters in the vicarage sub-settlement, stands across Vicarage Lane directly opposite the site. Its setting will be irreversibly harmed by the proposed development. That is substantial harm as a reason to refuse the application. Councillors, can you ask why this has been omitted from the officer's assessment, please? This committee stated clearly on the 11th of March that you did not want any play areas next to an attenuation basin, but the applicant state moved the play area. It's just that they didn't want to. It could be put anywhere on this open field. It's clearly understood a basin cannot be moved, but from paragraph 8.3, it states a more shallow slope will only have 30 millimetres of water in it in normal times. What about when it can have over a metre of water? How can it be used for public open space if flooded? A police requirement is to have a boundary around the basin. Why isn't that a condition? The council have the same duty of care of the police to safeguard residents. The truth is, not enough space has been allocated on the site for the right size of basin to meet the subs formula. So a supplementary crate system has been proposed on which the Flood and Water Officer comments are much more difficult. This crate system appears to be a soakaway, not underground storage, but the soil type means it will drain too slowly. Crate systems create a need for maintenance that basins do not. They silt up. It's very hard to get the silt out. The report does not say who will provide any maintenance on this site except maintained by a management company. Who, when, how in black and white is not stated. The officer's report in 8.3 states crates would be a compromise. Nothing in the built environment should be deliberately compromised in year 1 to cause extra expense in years 5, 10, etc. That is what sustainability means in CS15. Councillors, there are some of the clear points of planning policy on which to base a refusal for this, poorly designed, and with 100 houses starting shortly across the village at Barrow Hill, unnecessary development. I'm happy to take questions, of course. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. I know the time bar went a bit haywire, but I'd got a stopwatch here, so you had a few more seconds left, but you've used your time that you wanted to use. Thank you. I'll see if there's any questions to you. On your point of CN06, I will ask the officer to comment on that, because obviously it's a bit difficult for us to all be checking our paperwork and different things to try and find where it is in the report. So I'll get the officer to comment on that. But members, is there any other questions you wish to put forward to the objector?
Yes.
Hang on, I've got some here. Where are we?
Sue Hayes.
The planning officer, Officer Russell, you've got an answer for Libby regarding, I think, CN06. Is that correct?
I can provide a nation. I think.
Right. I think perhaps you better answer that before I take the questions from the members to the objector. Okay, just in case they're going to refer to that. Can you just help us out on CN06, please?
Yeah, I mean, CN06 is the local plan policy relating to the setting of the listed buildings and other heritage assets. In this case, there is a historic building here called Higher Ground. The heritage officer assessed the application, and from his report, his concern was the setting of the listed building, the old vicarage, rather than this dwelling. If he'd had concerns about this dwelling, he would have discussed those in his response.
Thank you. Right, members. Have you any questions for the objector?
Yes, I have, Chair.
Councillor Ayres.
Yes, I wondered this debate about where to have the children's play area. How would the village feel, because it's so wet down there, if they had allotments down there? Would that not be an alternative?
Is that a question to me?
Yep.
Allotments exist at the other side of the village, adjacent to the Barrow Hill site, in fact. And since the Barrow Hill site includes a community orchard at present, then I feel that they may be growing apple trees, or they may be growing vegetables. It's it's still a point to be determined. But yes, the village has got allotments. Allotments could be placed there, of course, but that would have to be a condition of the of the application, and the application would have to be modified in order to show clearly what was expected of the developer in terms of putting in the said allotments.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Parker?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And again, good morning, Mr. Purser. Mr. Purser, much of your representation was predicated on the effective harm, heritage harm. However, looking in the forthcoming Joint Local Plan Preferred Options document, consultation document, the proposed development site here is actually an allocated site. So is it your contention that this is just a completely unsuitable site, whether it was this development or any other development?
It is, and that's in alignment with our ward councillors and the parish council. This field has been batted to and fro for housing development for the last nearly 30 years, and it's always been knocked back because it would be, as was described, a carbuncle on the edge of the village. It is a long way, 500 metres from the shop. It's pedestrian access, unless you drive round by the road, not even cycle access. There are clearly no cycling signs on the footways from the estate that it crosses, Lime Tree Estate, down into the high street where the shop is. There are a lot of points that are being skated over. This was put forward as a designated point in the joint local plan, sure, but the joint local plan hasn't been decided. It's heavily delayed for reasons we're all probably aware of, and until the joint local plan is clear, it is the view of the residents that this site should not be considered for housing. And one of the more important points that I've tried to bring out at the very end of my
I'm sorry, Mr. End. I think I've got to keep you just to answering the question that was put
sure.
to you.
I was saying,
but I think you're going into a long debate, which I can't really.
I can finish it in one sentence,
Thank you.
Chairman.
Please do.
Yes, the 100 houses on Barrow Hill are going ahead.
Thank you. Any other questions? No. Okay. Thank you, members. Thank you, Mr. Aaron. Let's find who's next. Come up. Rob, while I've just got you, this timer thing keeps doing funny things, so I've got a stopwatch beside me as well. Okay.
As do I, Chair.
We're on. Oh, good. Well done. I will now ask the applicant to speak. Robert Uburn, you have 3 minutes also in which to address the committee.
Thank you for providing me with the opportunity to speak. My name is Robert Eburn and I'm Planning Director for Bloor Homes Easton. The scheme for Acton is proposed in accord with policy LA 45 of your emerging joint local plan, which identifies Acton and this site as a sustainable location for rural housing growth. The approval of the application was deferred in March by this committee so that amendments to the scheme could be sought. The affordable housing should be planned in groups of 15 homes or less to assist with tenure blindness. This change has been made and the affordable housing is much better integrated. As a testament to deliver a great inclusive development, we also are proposing that all 35 of the affordable homes will be built ready for their first new residents prior to the completion of just 26 of the market homes. The scheme is therefore demonstrably placing the need for affordable housing as a first priority. Members also wanted to see some bungalows added to the housing mix. Councillor Busby asked that these be planned as 2-bed bungalows rather than as swanky bungalows, as he put it. This change should be at the cost of 4-bed homes. We have made this change to the housing mix, which continues to comply with the need assessment. We have also removed 2.5-storey homes. Members wanted to see the instance of on-plot triple parking to be reduced. Again, we have completely eradicated triple parking while increasing overall availability and accessibility of parking spaces. Some members have reservations about the proximity of the children's play area to the Suds attenuation basin and to Tamage Road. This has been resolved by moving the equipped play area and its visitor parking further from the basin and changing the landscaping proposals. Although the basin is shallow and safe, the equipped area is also fenced, and a further fence will be provided to the basin. The play space will be ROSPA approved, so you can guarantee that it will be safety audited. The development is guided by an energy statement to reduce carbon emissions and to improve the energy efficiency of homes. The scheme includes PV solar panels. Provision is also made for electric vehicle charging points. Bloor will pay nearly £1 million in community infrastructure levy. 15% of this fund goes to the parish council for it to dedicate to its own infrastructure priorities. In addition, £233 will be secured via a Section 106 agreement towards education, transport, bus service and public right-of-way improvements. As we move into the next stages to deliver this project, I thank you for putting your faith in us and ask that you endorse the recommendation of the report to approve this proposal in its amended form. Thank you. I'm free to take questions if you want.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'll see if there's any questions for you, and I'll start with Councillor Suez, and then anybody else can just tap in. Councillor Ayres?
No questions, thank you.
Councillor Barrett?
Yes, please. Ask about the bungalows, the arrangements in the bungalow. Are they going to be designed with wet rooms and wider doorways and those sort of arrangements that can accommodate changing needs, elderly population?
Yes, their design is what is called accessible and adaptable. That's the standard. And I'll remind you, of course, that all of the homes here are to nationally described space standards. So some of these things apply to the rest of the homes on the site.
Thank you. Councillor Plum?
Thank you, Chair. Just one question from me. Is there absolutely no way you can move the play area to another area of the development? I'm well aware of a child can drown in a few centimetres of water, and I've had problems with this type of thing in my own ward. It's really worrying me where you're putting this playground.
Hello, Councillor Plum. I'd respect your concern, but there are different types of SUDS areas, and this area is a very shallow basin, and it's quite common for it to be next to play area. What we have done is, of course, we've moved the play equipment, and it's now shown as a fenced area. We'll have hoop-topped railings around it, and also we will be proposing a fence between the wider play area, just the amenity space, and the SUDS itself, even though that SUDS area it doesn't require that to get a Royal Society for Prevention of Accidents certificate. So it's kind of a sort of a double lock to prevent there being any incident here. And I am aware, as you are, of other instances where there are quite deep basins, and that is not what's proposed here, and that's part of the reason why there is a sort of crated system here as well, to make sure that the scheme is quite shallow with very shallow size. So hopefully I think that reassures you that the scheme is not unlike many other schemes which have this similar relationship.
Thank you. Councillor Hinton?
Supplementary, please, Chair.
Yep.
So the answer to my question is quite simply no. To me, that's giving me the answer I didn't want to hear. Thank you.
Well, that wasn't a question.
Well,
Thank you. Councillor Hinton?
Thank you, Chairman. Just let me stop this call.
That's fine.
Get off. It's all right, got it now. Sorry about that. Just a question for the applicant he mentioned the SIL contributions. Was he working out his SIL contributions based on the market housing or all the housing on the site? And does he consider that that would solve any of the problems?
Yeah, of course, SIL contributions are mandatory. Yeah, the SIL contribution is based upon only the market housing, because the affordable housing doesn't attract a SIL contribution. Yeah, it's a sizable amount, and I say it's just short of £1 million of SIL, which again is free for the council to spend on infrastructure as it sees fit. And I've been involved in a number of schemes throughout Babergh and also in Suffolk, and it's quite normal for the SIL contribution to be in excess of the infrastructure requirements that are claimed against it. But a number of issues would be resolved. There's a claim against that contribution by the NHS, for instance. So, and also there's a claim against that contribution for schools to make sure there are enough school places. So there are key elements here which are dealt with to make sure that the scheme washes its own face in terms of dealing with infrastructure requirements.
Thank you. Councillor Parker.
Well, thank you, Chair. Good morning, Mr. Eburn. Could you give us some sense of the engagement that you have undertaken with the community to gain their consent for this development?
Thank you, Councillor Parker. Yes, certainly this development has been the subject, as any development which is a standard full planning application, been subject to full public engagement. We did a public exhibition. There's a statement of community involvement submitted with the application, and of course we've had considerable dialogue with various sort of statutory consultees and associated with the amendments that the committee requested on the 11th of March to make sure we get this application in the best possible shape and to make sure it meets with local requirements.
Thank you. Councillor Jameson.
Yeah, good morning. One of the proposed conditions is for biodiversity mitigation and measures, and I'm wondering what you plan to do to provide a net gain for biodiversity within the site.
Thank you, Councillor Jameson. Basically, the biodiversity plan will be, it's part of the overarching landscape and landscape management. So we obviously we ensure that the landscape and planting has got native planting within it, and also there's a number of ecological matters. I think mentioned earlier on was hedgehog holes. Well, yeah, we propose that throughout the development. Obviously, there are certain elements where there are brick walls, which are there for design purposes, but a lot of the development is fencing and hedges. So there's a general look at ecology and how the development can have some enhancement value on ecology. And that also goes over to the SUDS area, which has ecological planting, and it's not just a blank area, it's an area which has got wildlife planting in there to encourage habitat, and so that the development sits very well in that respect.
Thank you. I have no other councillors wanting to put questions to you. So one's come in. Councillor Osborne.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. On that same subject to the applicant, I've mentioned this before on several developments. I'm not absolutely certain whether I've mentioned it on this one. It's
a question to this.
Yep. To the applicant. Yeah.
Yep.
That within these houses, if this is approved, could the applicant please ensure that we have areas of swift bricks to go into these properties, please?
Thank you. Yes, what we do is we submit a plan to the council, to officers, which show exactly where those bricks go, the swift bricks go, and we have bird box as well. The two are slightly different, and so there'll be a plan showing exactly where those go, and there's that gets looked at by the wildlife trust, so they can just check to make sure they're on the right orientation, because we wouldn't want to put them in somewhere where they wouldn't be used. So that works very well, and that's detail is to come.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. That's an excellent answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Owen.
Yeah, just have a couple of quick questions, really. Solar panels, is that on every house? And the electric points, how many electric points will there be around the estate? Thank you.
Yeah, so the solar PV panels, that is a matter which is being looked at on a sort of the next sort of technical level of detail. It really does relate to the orientation of the building. So and what the target is, not necessarily just to have solar panels, but to have a reduction in carbon emissions, and our target level of carbon reduction is 10%. So we will achieve that through a variety of means, including solar voltaic panels.
And the electric charging?
Oh, electric charging, sorry, I just think electric charging, we're a bit of a leader on this, so our developments all have electric charging points, and they tend to be within garages and on plot, because that's the best way to manage them. And again, there can be a plan submitted subsequently which shows exactly where these will go, but it will be widespread throughout the development, and so that our new residents are equipped to deal with have electric vehicles as and when they see fit.
Thank you. Councillor Busby.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, Mr. Eburn. Could you tell me where on the scale of swankiness these 2-bedroom bungalows are going to fit?
Thank you very much, Councillor Busby. I think when you mentioned the word swanky, I was sitting directly behind you at that previous committee. I think what you were looking for was that we didn't just propose large bungalows which could just end up being family bungalows. I think the objective was to look at these being occupied by older people, and this particular size of bungalow, they are 2-bed bungalows, and so they fit within that area of the market. This scheme has been reviewed by our marketing director, and they're satisfied that this is just the sort of property that people would want to downsize to. So we think it's a really good improved mix, so that we get some more smaller units in there. And obviously, at your request, we've reduced the number of 4-bed homes commensurately.
Thank you. If only developers listen to me more often.
As you can see, our Councillor Busby is very good with his use of words.
Okay,
you achieved something here, Councillor Busby, so that's very good. Councillor Barrett. Councillor Barrett?
Sorry. I was going to ask about the electric charging points. Councillor Owen asked it, but I think you addressed it in terms of the normally based in garages. So will every householder be able to charge an electric vehicle by their house?
I think that the answer to that question is no. There will be, in most of these developments, have a general scheme which allows the majority to do that, but then some, through design, some properties don't really have that facility. We wouldn't want a cable running across the road, for instance. So it's just done on a property by property basis. But I would say the answer is the majority.
Thank you. Councillor Jameson.
Hello again. Yeah, you mentioned, or it's mentioned in the report that underground water storage crates are going to be introduced to add surface water capacity. As mentioned, I think, by the parish council, these require a lot of maintenance, and this was also mentioned in the report. And I'm wondering who is going to be doing that maintenance in the future.
Yeah, again, thank you very much. This is not unlike other schemes which involve this. This is not a new thing we're doing here. It's and the maintenance gets put into a management company, and there's a payment per property that for this to be looked after, and there'll be a management plan drafted which shows that the crates and the overall subsystem get maintained on a routine basis, so they will be effective for the life of the development, not just for a year or two. This is something which persists in perpetuity.
Thank you. There's no more questions requested in the chat box, so members, If there's no more, we'll move on. Oh,
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor McLaren, you've just come in. Yep.
Sorry about that, Chair.
No, that's fine.
I forgot to push the right button. I just want to ask Mr. Eburn. No developer could have foreseen the situation we are in the country. And one of my concerns is, because of this large development around Acton, what employment prospects are there for the people that are going to buy the houses and going to live there, as Sudbury already has got some problems with its employers leaving the town?
I think this question somewhat goes to the heart of the principle of the development. Obviously, this is a site which is allocated for development, and it also has very good access to areas of employment, which has led to it being allocated in your policy LA 45. It also has very good access to the national cycle route. So I say there is significant employment in the locality, which will meet the needs of the local community here. Remembering, of course, that 35% of the homes will be occupied by people who are already from the locality because they are in affordable housing needs. So I think the answer to your question is generally this has good access to employment. And going back to the sort of COVID-19 crisis, Bloor Homes is responding to that, and we are gradually getting back to work and getting back to deliver sites. And obviously this is a key part of our economic recovery, this site, going into 2021, 2022 and beyond.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Hinton? You wish to come back, Councillor Hinton?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, the applicant just mentioned the fact that the 35% of the houses were going to be for local people. Well, perhaps he isn't aware that we are part of the Greater Haven housing area, so we could end up with applicants coming from as far away as Chelmsford. So it's not reserved for local people, so it doesn't necessarily mean because you're building social housing that it is going to be available for local people, unless it's on an exemption site where you can then reserve it for people with a local connection.
I think your housing officer would probably beg to differ. That there is a very significant housing need in this locality, which is on the council's housing register for people wanting new homes, who are in dire housing need and are households in need. So I think you can be reassured that there will be people from the locality who need these affordable homes, and indeed need the market homes.
Mr. Chairman, if I could come back, I would just say then that in some of the villages in my area, we have residents who can't get housing next door to existing family or near to existing family members because the houses seem to be allocated to people from outside of the county, even because they have more points on the housing scheme.
Councillor Hinton, I would like to say that it's one of my priorities to make sure that there is priority given to local people, particularly for affordable housing, and it's a clause that I often ask to be put into Section 106 agreements to achieve exactly that.
The district council does have housing policies, so that they would come into play anyway. But I would just like to say, in answer to some of the comments just made there, that I visited the Persimmon site in Great Cornard at Sheepshead Hill over the weekend, and I was told there was only 2 properties left for sale. They're all taken, and they haven't actually finished building them yet. So that surprised me, really did. Anyway, I'm going to ask the officer, if there's no other question from members, to clarify that last point. Elizabeth, can you help us out?
Yes, so the proposed affordable housing is not for local needs, so it's not just for the parish of Acton and people surrounding it. However, what we always require in the first instance, so is the very first allocation of that affordable housing will be prioritise the district first. So whereas subsequent allocations, so for the could include people in the Haven Gateway, initially it would all go to, if there is the demand, it will all go to people within the district. Obviously, if there is not enough demand within the district, then they would look wider.
Thank you. Right, members, I think that's cleared up that point. If there's no one else wishing to put any questions to the last speaker, the applicant, I will thank Mr. Eburn and we'll move on. Thank you. I will now ask the ward member, Councillor John Nunn, to address you. You, sir, have 5 minutes in which to address the committee.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Nunn.
Okay. When on the 11th of March this committee met to debate the application, there was a definite move towards refusal. 7 of you voted against and only 4 supported. It seemed to my residents that the committee needed a little more time and help from officers in formatting the many reasons raised that support refusal. So we are hoping this time around you take a fresh look and will carefully consider all the information put forward by the parish council. With local knowledge of the highway use, residents have raised concerns about highway safety. They are really concerned about the introduction of a new junction into Tamage Road. Residents consider it unreasonable that the applicant's highway consultants have registered evidence of nosing along Tamage Road is fabricated. And we do not accept their solution that existing residents should find somewhere else to park. This is a ridiculous proposal. The applicant's consultants and county highways officers have surveyed Tamage Road and Brickage Lane during the working day and not in the evening and weekends. And let us not forget, the new normal is more people working from home. They have overlooked the safety concerns where heavy parking restrict the carriageway to a single track with no passing places. Safety issues at Crown Junction have also been brushed away without proper consideration of additional traffic from the existing approved 100 dwellings at Barrow Hill. The traffic from 200 new dwellings may well verge onto this busy junction with poor visibility and existing parking hazards. We have a member of this committee living nearby who surely firsthand can confirm the highway concerns. Healthcare and education facilities are both at capacity locally. There still does not exist a proper solution for the lack of school places. Children from 200 new homes will have to travel by car or bus to school. The proposal that SIL monies will cover the cost of transport is no guarantee that a service will ever be provided. Guaranteed solutions to mitigate this education shortfall. Another concerning issue is that the current and long-term government guidance makes it clear that walking or riding a cycle to school should be the new norm, and certainly not bundling children onto buses. With COVID-19 a long-term concern, class sizes are set to reduce, more pressure on school capacity. Government have put aside billions of pounds in funds for local highways authorities to encourage that local journeys are made by cycle or walking. The remote location of this site will result in many local journeys by car or bus. Latest government guidance for highways, for highways authorities have instructed that such travel should be reduced, not increased. I am really concerned that the officer report has not assessed this latest legislation, or at least referred to it to county highways for advice. This officer report suggests that the local community will benefit from S106 and SIL payments. The real situation is that these monies will not benefit the existing community or improve local infrastructure at all. These payments are purely to mitigate the impact of the proposed development. Councillor Busby has already asked for a more in-depth explanation of SIL and 106 payments. Why on earth is £12,500 of SIL money being allocated to upgrading a rural muddy path across the redundant airfield? It is going to take a lot more than £12,500 to improve the surface, lighting and drainage of the route. Upgrading this path will urbanise the open countryside. There are little or no benefits to the existing community from this application. Officers recently concluded in a recent refused Acton planning application at Clay Hall Lane that there was no proven need for 4-bedroom homes in the village. So again, this application with its 21 4-bedroom dwellings does not have any tangible benefits for the existing community or wider area. As it had been said, the balance of the scale should fall heavily on the refused side. This application has been subjected to many errors, shortcomings and last-minute changes, which has frustrated the residents. Finally, just to remind you, 7 members voted against this application in March, so please support the long list of reasons raised for refusal, and let us finally reject this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Nunn. I think just before I go to the ward member, to the committee members, does the officer have anything to clarify on what's just been said? Elizabeth or Mark? I don't know if either.
In relation to which points?
Well, there was quite a few there, wasn't there? I didn't know.
May I take the first one, Chair, about the motion last time? The way the debate went, there was a motion to approve, and then that fell. But it didn't then mean that it was going to be refused or there was a proposal for refusal. There was no proposal for refusal.
Correct.
What members asked for were some changes without prejudice. Didn't mean they would support it if the changes were made, but they asked for some changes. So it could then come back and be reconsidered. There wasn't a motion to refuse.
Open mind on it, yeah.
Yes, exactly. That's the point I want to raise there. I think Libby can probably cover the other the schools, etc. Is that okay?
Yeah, because she did point out where the school was originally. But if you just take that point, Libby, and then I'll go to the members.
Yeah, just to clarify, the issue with school is that the current forecasts show that the school is currently got a lot of out of catchment children. So the county consider that once these sort of the churn has gone through and the out of catchment children and possibly siblings have left, there will be space for both the children from this development and the Barrow Hill development to go to the school. So while they are asking for funding for transport for primary pupils, this is only for 7 years. They consider that within the 7 years there will be then space within the school for the local children. So while it's not ideal, this is not a long-term situation where children would be bused to school forever. It would be short within 7 years. And those forecasts also do include the Barrow Hill development, and it's not clear which one of these two will happen first. The Barrow Hill still requires its reserved matters.
Thank you. And just before we go to the members, and I'll start with Suez in a moment, is that Councillor Nunn, you did refer to 200 dwellings. I'm assuming you're referring to the Barrow Hill as well as this one, because this is only 100 dwellings, and I have to remind members that we are dealing with the one in front of us, which is 100.
Yes, Peter, that was a combined figure.
Thank you. Councillor Ayres, do you wish to speak?
No, thank you, Chair.
Right. Councillor Owen?
Yes, please. I was just say about the schools and everything, because we're with the schools, you haven't got any space at the moment. But all this was decided before the COVID-19. Surely it's changed now. Surely we've got to go back to some.
I've got to stop you there. It's a question to the ward member. That sounded like a question in debate for the officers to respond to.
Oh yeah, that's what I put my "can I speak" when Elizabeth was speaking.
Right. I'll come back to you then when we go into debate.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any questions to Councillor John Nunn, the ward member, from members of the committee? No? Okay, move on. And we'll now ask the other ward member, Councillor Elizabeth Malvases. You also have 5 minutes in which to address the committee, so your time starts now. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everybody. Last time we were here, you rejected this application 74. It was then deferred. But at that time, I was discussing climate change, and it had to influence our thinking, however little knowing how our world was about to change. We do need the right house in the right place, but this development fits neither. And yet nothing has changed in Acton because there is no demonstrable needs assessment. Nobody has asked the village of Acton and the residents of Acton, do you want 100 houses? COVID arrived and it's now changed, not just for now, but also the future, because it's here to stay. So what are we going to do about it? How are we going to build in a way that does not encourage it to rampage like it has done? COVID was rampant in places of high density, so planners and councillors require courage and vision to ensure that we create living space that will help prevent its continuance. I ask this committee to have that vision and reject this application because it does not provide what is needed for now and in the future. It's been kicking around 16 and it's taken 10 months to get to be in front of you. This development, plus another already granted, will increase the number of homes in Acton by 20%. Is this consistent with policy CS11? Does it match local needs? This council, most like this committee, recently rejected another Acton development of 4-bedroom houses on officers' recommendation that Acton did not need 4-bedroom houses. Well, which is it to be? Is there a need or isn't there? Visual impacts, ability to integrate the development into the landscape. Does it do that? No, it stands out like a carbuncle. How does it comply with CS10, which states that it should not exceed identified need and be suitable in size and scale? But the officers have already said there is no need, so why is there a need? You asked that bungalows be included. Can I remind the applicant that bungalows are not just for elderly people? Bungalows are also for young people. But none of these are affordable. The triple parking, replaced with garages that look like 1970 standards in size. However, maybe this is the developer's attempt to dissuade car use, which I commend the sentiment, but not the actuality. The application would sit well in suburbia, not in a rural setting on the edge of the Stour Valley. A crammed design in a rural setting. And I stressed the crammed because of COVID. The play area was to be away from the attenuation basis. The request has been ignored. Affordable houses tend to be sought by young families at one end of the development, and the play area is at the other, near the basin and the Sudbury Road. And if you've got children, I had 4, they do not stay. They climb through hedges and up trees and they cross roads. So why not put the centre of put the play area in the centre of the development, keeping children safe and thereby complying with policy 21? You asked, but you've not totally got it. Despite swapping some market affordable houses, they're still not pepper potted or tenure blind as policy requires. 15 dwellings at one end in a cul-de-sac, and it's a dedicated cul-de-sac, totally contrary to location and operational advice given, yet incorrectly supported in this layout approach by officers' report document, paragraph 6.4. Why has recommended for approval been given to you with this glaring error? Can officers explain to the committee why this substandard evidence has slipped through? And yet it begs the question, what else has slipped through? Councillor Busby asked for clarity regarding SIL in section 106. Maybe he has received it now. I wholly concur with Councillor Nunn. 12,500 for a footpath is totally insufficient when it's going across a field. But COVID-19 is here, and COVID-19 should be making everybody think of what they're doing and not doing. You have the flexibility. It is in your power. Reject it once and for all. You've been given all the reasons in planning policy to so do. This is wrong houses in the wrong place, crammed and just waiting for COVID-19 to fester. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right. You said quite a lot. I think there's will be a few questions to this. Councillor Busby, you've got a question to the ward member.
Thank you. Yes, Liz, you brought in COVID-19 quite a bit there. And one of the feelings that's come out of it is that people will be working from home more and more, and therefore require kind of dedicated workspace. And therefore, though I'm loath to kind of say it, there could be a need for 4-bedroom houses where perhaps one of those rooms is actually used as an office. So how do you feel about that?
Councillor Busby, I totally agree with you. But the point I was trying to make was that there has been an application submitted for 4-bedroomed houses, and these were rejected by the officers. The recommendation from the officers was to reject the application. The application rejected. Now they're saying, well, we'll keep these 4-bedroomed houses here, but we don't want those 4-bedroomed houses there. So it's the contradiction.
Thank you. I will get the officers to answer that point after we've finished with questions to you, Councillor Marvesi. Any other members wish to put questions? Councillor Councillor Barrett.
Thank you. Yeah, a question for Liz Marvesi. Hello, Liz.
Hello.
We can all interpret how COVID is going to affect our lives in the future in many different, and I'm sure it will in many different ways. I think it's quite possible that it will lead to even more need for affordable houses as people find their incomes, future income affected. Do you think that should be taken into account?
Yes, I do. There is scientific evidence now that demonstrates that COVID-19 festers, multiplies in crammed houses, so in high density living areas. Affordable housing is needed, but it needs space around them. They shouldn't be at the end of a cul-de-sac, crammed into a tight space. Had the play area been in the centre of the development, it would have offered a visual better aspect, it would safety for the children, and it would have been easier to pepper pot the affordable housing to achieve social mix and thereby discourage COVID to fester.
Thank you. I think some of this COVID-19 is sort of a hearsay. They're not actually proven facts and things. So I think we have to bear that in mind as well, members.
I disagree, Mr. Chairman. There is scientific evidence on the...
well, there may be, as I say, a lot of this is different views. So I think we have to weigh them all up. Councillor Parker.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just sticking with the COVID theme, if we're now going to use COVID as a planning measure, how does Councillor Malvesi square that with the fact that we've just all spent 10 weeks at home specifically to reduce the transmission of COVID?
Very good point. Councillor Malvesi.
Yeah, the screen keeps on. I don't know whether you can hear me or not. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can all hear you, yes.
Okay,
don't worry
fine.
about the screen, that's controlled elsewhere.
Okay, right. How do I square that? Because it was a one-size-fits-all when they didn't know how it operated. Now that they know that it works in crammed, high-density living areas, I would think that the policy would be different. But when you don't know what you're dealing with and you're in a tunnel and it's a bit dark and you can't see the end of the tunnel because there's no light, they took a decision, or the government took a decision and went down. I would suspect that if there is a second wave, and I'm of the belief that there will be a second wave, then the policy will be slightly different because they have learned, hopefully, from their mistakes. They have watched the virus, how it's travelled and how it's disseminated itself in society, and therefore it will be different.
Can I just have a supplementary, Chair, just quickly?
Yes.
So, Councillor Malvesi, you'll be aware that we don't have anything within our planning guidance that allows us to consider this application based on COVID. So, do you think, it's a straight yes or no, do you think that we should support or reject this application based on COVID-19?
You asked me if I think, and
yes
I do.
No?
Well, I was asked if I think, and I do think. I'm Homo sapiens.
Thank you. Members, you'll have to interpret that as you feel fit. Any other questions to The ward member? No. Right, then we're going to move into debate. Before I do that, I see Officer Russell wishes to comment.
Thank you, Chair. You can hear me, I hope.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Just to advise that there has been bits and pieces of guidance coming out from government about COVID, but it's all been about temporary measures to keep things going. It's been that sort of thing. We haven't, to my knowledge, had anything saying our decisions must now be based on some different future. So there's not a piece of planning guidance, to my knowledge, which should alter the decision we make today about this application.
Thank you.
And if you want to talk about the density now, we can do that, or do you want that to come out in the debate?
I think we'll go into debate.
Okay, thank you.
I intend to start. Councillor Busby, can I just ask you, can your question be directed in the debate, or do you want to do it now separately?
Oh no, it can be done in the debate.
Thank you. I'll come into debate. I'll come to you, but I did promise that I'd come back to her because she'd got. We'll go into debate now. So if you'd like to go into debate, you can put your questions and views and comments, and then the officers will answer. Okay, Councillor Owen.
Yeah, I was only just saying, but mine's COVID-19. Surely the county council maybe an update on the schools, because obviously Acton now still hasn't got the capacity that it needs, and it's going to go over a few years. So surely the class sizes are going to be not as many, and it's not going to be just this year. It's going to be for a few years yet, I reckon. Surely that's got to come into consideration.
I believe Officer Elizabeth Flood did answer that, but can you help us out on this, Elizabeth?
Yeah, I mean, clearly the county forecast of school places is based on the normal situation, which is generally 30 per class. I would be very wary of thinking that anything else is going to be long term. Clearly we want these houses to be there. If they're approved, they will be hopefully well built, and they'll be here for 70 years. So I think we do need to be out looking at a short-term impact. If long-term schools can only have 15 per year, then there will be a massive change to all school forecasts, and there'll have to be a doubling of school numbers or school sizes, and that's going to have a massive impact. So I think wary of looking in terms of a long-term decision about this.
Thank you. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Chair. I have to bring to your attention that Acton School is not at capacity. It has place of capacity for 210 pupils. Individual year groups, some of those might be, classes might be full, but the overall number of pupils currently registered to attend that school is 177. So it's well below capacity, and that's even with out of catchment pupils attending. So if some of those places were didn't include the out of catchment pupils, it would be well below capacity. And schools do not thrive well when they are not at capacity, because the numbers don't support full employment of their staff. So I really need to bring everyone's attention to that, because that is public knowledge, and some of the ward members don't know this.
Right. Okay, that's a good point. Councillor Busby, you were next.
Yeah. Going back to the kind of SIL and Section 106 debate, if you look on page 35, Section 12, it talks about the county council wanting a contribution towards this school's transport, which it says cannot be provided by SIL. Are we saying that will be provided by Section 106? Because I'm very suspicious of money that the county council get, which is supposed to be used for schools transport, because they haven't got a very good record on continuing their promises. But if it's a Section 106 contribution, then surely this will be tied to that specific need.
You're always concerned about the county council, Councillor. I'll get you an answer. Elizabeth, can you help on this?
Yes, this would be 106 funding. I've spoken to the county, and they mentioned from the government that they can lawfully ask for this sort of funding for 106 funding for this sort of transport. I also asked them if they had any examples of where they have used this money, and they've said that it's a relatively short thing, that it's only been a short time that they've asked for it. So they haven't got any examples yet where they've had the money, the development has started and they have used it, but they are confident, and it will be part of the legal agreement. So the county can only draw down on it. They can only ask the developer for it if they can show that it is genuinely going to be used for primary school transport.
Thank you. Councillor Hinton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just on that last point, reading the county council's responses to education on before, they don't seem to think there's capacity for this development and the Barrow Hill development at the primary school. So Councillor Barrett's point is probably a little bit subject to interpretation by different bodies. The county council are saying it's full. We've got to take them for 7 years to somewhere else. A bit difficult to try and figure out who wants what. Then they're also saying this money is 106 linked for taking them to the primary school pupils somewhere else. What about the secondary school pupils? Because there's no mention of funding for them other than a 500,000 SIL request, which is going to be put in for secondary education. Nothing to say about transport of those people. The other thing about this application is that under CS11, core and hinterland villages, Acton's a hinterland village. To assume that it's part of Sudbury and Long Melford's cluster and therefore is liable for some of the housing deficit of those two areas is a little bit disingenuous, and rather dumps houses in the countryside, which is what we've been doing as a council for years, where 60% of all development has been taking place in the countryside. No, there's been no comment on this application from the NHS, and yet the doctor's surgery at Long Melford, I presume, is full, as most of them are. The Sudbury ones are probably full, and certainly they're talking about them possibly moving further away from this towards the south. So there are problems there, and there's employment's a problem as well. We've seen employment disappear in Sudbury, and yet here we are putting houses in the middle of the countryside and saying they're going to be employed. CS11 says that it should contribute towards the employment as well as the housing needs of an area. Well, there's no employment going to come from this other than from out-of-district builders who come in, do the job and then disappear again.
Thank you for that, John. Officers, I think I'll have to come to you to answer those questions, but before I do, just give you a moment to think about what Councillor Hinton has just asked. Councillor Parker's got a question on a SIL. Take him next, and then perhaps I'll bring you officers in afterwards. Councillor Parker.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And forgive me, I'm pouring through the report. I can't immediately see it, but what it actually is, the SIL contribution for this development, because I'll just a point that Councillor Nunn raised earlier about the lack of infrastructure spending, but of course 15% of any SIL contribution here will come back to the community. It would be 25 if they had a neighbourhood plan in place, and the remaining 85% of course is available for any village, any community to offset some of the the impact that's caused by the development. So I think it's a bit disingenuous to say that that the village won't and the community won't benefit from it. That is absolutely not the case. There's been significant sums of money have been contributed as a direct result of SIL to back into communities. And as I said, and as I reiterate, the parish of Acton will receive 15% of this straight into their own coffers.
Yes. Right there. Now I'll go to the officers. Can you answer these last couple of points from Councillor Hinton and Councillor Parker, please? Mark, Councillor Officer Russell.
Yes. Could you repeat the question or questions? I have several here, and I'll answer them.
Well, hopefully you've made a note of them.
I have, but there are so many. Which one would you like to answer?
Well, start at the beginning and go through them, please.
Okay. There was a question about SIL, and I think probably that's just been answered in the chat box. Mm-hmm. The actual figures, I think, are on. Is it page
37?
37, but I think there's actually I thought there was a box on page 47.
I'll have a look.
Which actually, yeah, it does. The box on 47 breaks down where the money would go.
Okay.
I've spoken to this.
With respect, sorry, Mr. Russell, sorry to break in, but page 47 is actually the application for Brantham.
Oh, go on, it's run through. Sorry, yeah, page 37, as you were. Okay.
That's the one I gave you, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, you got that. Good. That's that answered.
Well, is it what is the total contribution was the question?
It's can I pass you to Libby, because she's the case officer and she's got the information. Is that all right, Elizabeth? Can you do that? Thank you.
So there's two sets of funding. There's the 106 funding, which is set out in the proposal, and that is the funding for the school transport, the bus improvements, and the possible funding for the public right of way if it's not provided by the Chiltern Woods development. And just to be clear, that public right of way, we're not proposing to, the county is not proposing to light it and so on, because that wouldn't be appropriate in a rural setting. It's just to improve the surface, to make it a sort of hard-bound surface. In relation to the SIL money, I mean, there will be a sum of a sum of money from SIL that hasn't been completely calculated, and there has been requests from the county council in terms of school funding and from the NHS for funding to potentially expand the Long Melford practice, and if it's not possible to expand that practice, to look elsewhere for healthcare expansion.
Right, thank you. Officer Russell, did you want to come back at all?
Yeah, I think there was a little discussion about where the money would go and how it's channeled. I've had a discussion with the SIL team today, just for confirmation, just for everybody's information. 5% of the SIL money goes towards administration, so that's the paperwork. 20% of it goes towards strategic needs across the district, and the remaining 75% is ring fenced to items relevant to that village. So it doesn't mean the money goes in that village, but it would be things that would be relevant to that village. So, for example, education would be, for example, expanding the size of a school nearby to accommodate the pupils, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So that's how it's spent. Hopefully that clarifies that point.
Thank you. Right, members, still in debate. Is there any other member that wishes to make comments?
Yes, please.
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you. So we're in debate now. So
we are in debate. We've been in debate for 2 minutes. Yeah.
Okay. So we've heard quite the concerns, but we do have to weigh up and balance it all out, and look at the benefits as well, which and there are the affordable elements that this provides. So for me, that the issues that were raised in March have been addressed. That although the play area is still in the same corner as the attenuation basin, that it is fenced, it's going to be fenced. People should find that reassuring, rather than just rejecting it, really, I think. At the March meeting, the strategic manager, Julie Abbey Taylor, talked about the need for 1-bedroom units since the universal credit. I think it was called the bedroom tax. altered people's benefits in line with the number of bedrooms they had in their properties. So that there is a definite need. Heritage issue, that there needs to be, as the barrister at our training last year talked about, demonstrable harm. So that is I think more definitive than just saying harm. And I don't think there is demonstrable harm to the heritage asset. I think it's an acceptable level proximity. I think the villagers still have the footpaths near to the site, so although the views will change, the views are still available through the other side of the site. It is an allocated site. It's sustainable in terms of the village amenities: shop, bus, school, employment in Bull Lane and Sudbury. There's a good mix. Do welcome the addition of the bungalows, and although Councillor Busby talks about swanky, but I think a level of comfort is absolutely essential to encourage people to downsize and move out and not block those larger houses that can then be released back into sort of for families to move into. Solar, electric charging, all seems what we would expect to see. Also highways issues. I think the concerns people have about highways and movements, well, as we've heard, there are a lot of movements daily for children who are out of catchment. They must be dropped off by car in going along Tamage Road, which is the main access road to the school. That may reduce if more pupils from this village attend their village school. So we have to balance it out. It isn't all one-way traffic of more and more cars. We could see less traffic movements with that happening. I then have to address this issue about COVID and people's concerns, and I think it's really wrong to bring this in and suggest that we're putting people at risk by building houses in a certain way. I think it's totally outrageous, and I thoroughly reject that. I think that's a knee-jerk reaction to what's perceived as a long-term threat, and we don't know that, and it could be that it disappears as quickly as it came into this country. So I'm moving towards supporting this. I've sat through a lot of information this morning. We sat through a lot of information in March, and I'm moving towards approval. I'd like to hear what everyone else says. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Osborne.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I tend to agree with everything that Melanie has spoken about. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank our officers for the work that they did with the deferral of the application with the applicant, and way of going forward with all four of his of the things that we asked for resolved. Also, of course, the percentage of carbon content on the houses that were there, and also the page 37, which on completion, if the application was approved on completion of the legal agreement, I think everything has been done that we asked for in those areas. I can't see any reason from what's been brought forward today, previously from the deferral, to actually not to approve this application, and I'm very disappointed that if members cannot bring themselves to put housing on. I mean, in a lot of occasions that Sudbury are going to have to take the brunt of a lot of more housing, which it can always be done. However, we've not got that amount of space in Sudbury anymore. So I think these are good, sound judgment by the developer on what was discussed with the officers, and I congratulate Elizabeth Flood for bringing this forward with the developer. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Right, I've got Councillor Hinton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick comment, first of all, to just looking down the list here. Oh, yes, it's Elizabeth Malvesi who said there is no housing deficit in Long Melford. Well, I'll just draw her attention to 3.9 of the report on page 31, where Long Melford's lumped in with Sudbury as a dirty great big cluster, and that there's a housing deficit there. But why they're dumping them in the middle of the countryside called Acton, I do not know. But also to come back on this business about COVID-19, everybody's been working from home, yes, who could? A lot of those who have been furloughed are now finding that they haven't got a job. We've seen two of the biggest employers in Sudbury disappear. So where on earth are all these people going to work if they're not working from home? And not everybody can work from home. The two major employers in Sudbury who have just disappeared, neither of them could offer home working to their employees if they were still operating, because they were one was a big engineering company, and you can't do that from a computer at home. It's a hands-on job. Also, when talking about COVID and the design of developments, etc., Elizabeth Malvesi is quite right. We should be encouraging more open development, more logical development, because it's obvious from the statistics so far, and if anybody's looked at the statistics for Suffolk, West Suffolk and Babergh are the two lowest instances of COVID-19 in the county. Ipswich is one of the highest. Well, what's the difference between Ipswich and Babergh? One's an urban area and one's a rural area. So there must be some sense in the fact that we are isolated to a certain extent from our neighbours to start off with, which makes things safer. And perhaps we should be doing a little bit more of that in the design work. So there's a lot going to come out of this COVID business. One of the things that's obvious from the buses that go past my house at infrequent intervals now is that they are empty. People are not using them. They're using their cars to go anywhere because it's safer from the health point of view. So what are we going to do about that? Are we going to encourage everybody to get out there in their cars? I also find it a little bit disappointing that we don't have somebody from County Highways to answer questions about some of their comments, because eclectic with their comments, and they can be very vague and they can be very disingenuous when it comes to comments about highways nature. They don't tend to do an awful lot of the 24/7 surveying of road speeds and traffic movements. They tend to do it as spot times, and those spot times, if they are so, usually when the traffic is low. So I think we've got to look at getting them on board. When we moved into Endeavour House, and I know we're not in Endeavour House at the moment, but when we moved to Endeavour House, it was said, well, we'll be in the same building as Highways, so we'll be able to have them at our planning meetings and be able to ask them questions. What happens as soon as we move into Endeavour House? Highways move up to Landmark House at the top of Ipswich, away from us. So we've got to have a little bit more accountability from the correspondence. And I would just ask Elizabeth, when she was talking about the NHS provision, that it would have to be somewhere else if it couldn't be at a place that wasn't expanding. There's no mention in the report on this particular development about the NHS at all. And yet one of the things that COVID-19 is certainly going to do is going to make the NHS work in a different way.
Thank you, John. I will ask Elizabeth to come in, but just to point out that we did discuss highways taking part in the meeting, and our officers felt that they'd got all the information they needed, and they didn't think that was necessary for highways to take.
Sorry to interrupt, Peter. So if I ask the officers, have they got a 24/7 traffic movement survey done on Tannage Road or on the Sudbury Road in the village? Presumably they can.
I will try and get you an answer. I don't know why you got cut off there. It certainly wasn't me. Elizabeth, can you help us? Hello?
Hi, yes, sorry, I was just looking to see, to check that the NHS comment was put in the report. I'm pretty sure it was, but I would need to check. And that's that they have said that they would need more funding for a GP surgery, either to expand Long Melford, or if that's not practical, to expand elsewhere. And the clear place here would be in somewhere in Sudbury, where there are health centres and there are some which are capable of expanding if required. So that's it in terms of page 23 apparently has got the NHS comments.
Yep.
I mean, we do have to be a bit careful about when we talk about SIL funding, because obviously we don't know, it's a bidding process and we can't say it's going to go to a certain area, but yes, the NHS has requested funding, which they could bid on for this development.
Thank you. And the
Chairman, if I could come back on that point.
Hang on, John. On the point of the engaging the officers of highways to this meeting, you felt at the briefing that you were satisfied that you'd got the answers. Can you help John out on that?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say without having to go through all the highway reports whether they did do a survey of Tamage Road, because that might not have been so wanted. They generally want the surveys to be done on the busier roads rather than the road next to the development. But I can't say that for sure. But the highway officer has looked at the application. They did go out at peak times, which is what was requested, and they commented that they don't think that this is refusable on highways. As you're well aware, the bar for highways is high now. So although the junction with the Sudbury Road and High Street Junction isn't brilliant, and we've said that, they don't consider it to be a severe impact, which would prevent which would allow them to recommend refusal on this application.
Thank you. I have some speakers now, so I'm going to Councillor McCann. You're next. Mary?
Yep. Yes, thank you, Chair. Want to support what Councillor Barrett said about the developers did respond to the request we made of them in March.
Yep.
And I am very impressed with that. The other comments I want to make is about the density. There was a comment made about the density or the nearness of the houses for the affordable housing. What may be something that is viewed as dense in a rural area, but I've lived in denser places than that, so I'm not sure that that's an argument. The other thing is, as an ex-health service person, we're in the middle of an emotive period about COVID-19, but I do not agree with it being raised as an issue to the Planning Committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jameson?
Thank you, Chair. I'm of a slightly different view to Councillor McLaren and Councillor Barrett, and yes, the applicant has taken our comments on board, and they have made some changes, but the play area is hardly been moved, and while the affordable housing has been split up, I'm still uncomfortable with a collection of affordable properties in the northeast corner. I think the applicant could have used a bit more imagination, and although yes, we asked for 10 to 15 properties, they could have divided them up a little bit more. I'd also like to ask if a 4-bedroom house is affordable, even if just because it's rented. Does that make it affordable? It could still be a steep rent. That's about it.
Officers, did you wish to comment on anything you've heard?
The guidance for the affordable housing says that the maximum number should be 15. So I think that's what they've done. There is one cluster which is the maximum, but it is in accordance with our guidance, and it's for the housing for the registered providers. it does help them in terms of management to have housing in clusters, because they can own the bits at the side and so on. So there is some management benefits of having them in small clusters. If you literally had them all 35 split around the site, you would find it would be harder for them to be managed, and they'd probably be more expensive, because things like the driveways would have to be within the management company of the overall site, which can cause issues. So I think that's in terms of the clustering. In terms of the 4-bed affordables, that's what the Strategic Housing Officer requested. And clearly you would only get a 4-bed house if you had a very large family, because they don't like them to be under occupied, and therefore you would, while it might still be expensive rent, the Strategic Housing Officer clearly feels there is a need for one large dwelling as an affordable.
Thank you. Councillor Plum.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of comments, if I may, or 2 or 3. Affordable housing in blocks, they're just in smaller blocks. I think it would block the pepper pot. That play area, fences, children see them as an adventure. I want to see this play area away from the attenuation pond in the middle of the site. I can't accept anything less. And I will make the comment, scientists, COVID-19 is real. It is having impacts that we've got to start taking on board, or otherwise we're going to be in the position that the rest of the country is. It will be too late.
Thank you, but I think I have to remind members, you heard the planning officer say that COVID-19 isn't a recommended plan and reason. So yes, we can make comments, please weigh them up. This is what you have to do. Now, I haven't had any proposals or anything. Somebody else has just come in. That's Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so if I can just add my 4 into the debate, Chair. So, repeatedly say as a planning committee, we have to take decisions based upon planning balance and the rules that sit before us, the planning guidance that sits before us. And the officer has identified within the report that this development, and I concur actually with the officer, that the development represents sustainable development, and the NPPF is quite clear that where sustainable development is identified for decision-taking purposes, that means approving the development proposals that are called with an up-to-date development plan without delay. So do we have an up-to-date development plan? Well, clearly there is a development plan in place, and we do have the emerging joint local plan, which carries limited weight, as we know. But for me, and this is the most important thing, again, is that so many of our communities now are allowing us as a committee to inform our decision based on the existence or the emergence of their own neighbourhood plan. In this example, we do not have a neighbourhood plan. Councillor Malvisi said, has asked the residents of Acton whether they want 100 houses. Well, I'm quite sure that that hasn't happened to any great extent. But the important thing here for me, Chair, is that we don't have a plan to guide us. And so therefore the only plan that is available to us to make a decision on is our existing local plan. And based on that, I think that the side issues being that actually to me this looks like an eminently deliverable site. It is an allocated site within the forthcoming joint local plan. That has to be taken into consideration as well. The developer has responded to this committee's comments from March. We asked the developer to go away and make amendments. Now, we did that without prejudice, but the developer has gone away and he's fulfilled what this committee asked him to do. So I can confirm Councillor Barrett on this, and I'm leaning very heavily in favour of supporting the officer's recommendation from a pure planning balancing point of view, Chair. So that's my comment for now.
Thank you. I have next Adrian Osborne, followed by Mallory Ballard, which I will come to both of you in a moment, but the Officer Russell wishes to clarify a point, so I'll do that now.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, one is always conscious of not contributing to the debate, but just clarifying some facts before the debate proceeds, and etc. Just to clarify, members, that you all know this already, the applicant did describe the site allocation and the policy relating to the site. The JLP is at an early stage, so that is of limited weight. You have to consider that, although it does show a direction of travel. Barrow Hill, I think Libby mentioned this, the reserve matters hasn't been applied for yet. So the likelihood of that coming along soon, it's not a given. They are experiencing some problems with the SUDs, so we don't know if it will happen. That's the most clear we can be on that side. Strategic housing agreed to the mix, so that's that done. The 4-bed scheme in Clay Lane was only 4-bedders. It was a completely 4-bed scheme. That was one of the reasons that it wasn't acceptable. Not the mere fact of 4-bedders. It was completely 4-bed scheme. Okay. The density of calculated the gross density of approximately 29 per hectare, 29 and a half per hectare. So it would seem not to be tense. SIL, I think we've covered. I won't go back on that point. Jobs, the point was raised about the loss of employment in Sudbury, but we have to consider that the Chiltern Wood site, and I've been corresponding with Stephen Stroud just to confirm, it's got permission. There's a land promoter acting on behalf of employment land. So they're coming on stream in Chiltern Woods. So there is some employment there. The last point, sorry, it was just to confirm, we can't, understood about the long-term concerns and the scientific feelings behind COVID. We've got no guidance, nothing to tell us we should make our decisions differently because of it. So we must not consider that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, you've all heard that. I'm going to Councillor Osborne.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I'd listened to and read through all the paperwork, and I agree with Melanie Barrett and Lee Parker that they have made great efforts to actually come up with the resolving the problems that we had on the referral, and I would either propose or second the for this to go to the vote. Thank you.
Well,
for approval.
You have to do one or the other. You can't give me a choice.
I'll go for proposal, Mr.
Right. So, would you like to do that formally, please?
Yes. Yes, I would like to take the officer's recommendation for approval of this development, and once again thank them for the effort that they put into the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've had a recommendation for proposal by Councillor Osborne. Councillor Barrett, you wanted to come in.
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to second that. Just 2 points, as I spoke quite early in this debate. I think it is not acceptable to change the goalposts. The developer has split up the affordable, and there are now no more than 15 in one location. Can't then stipulate that we have another condition once they've met the first condition that we've provided. Also on the fencing, at the last meeting, we wanted the play area essentially to be safe for pupils, for children to use. I think the developer has addressed the safety issue. If you want to dictate the layout of a site, then I think that should have been clear what you actually wanted at the last meeting. So again, seconding this application.
Thank you. Right, members, we've had a proposal, and is there any other comments that any member wishes to make? No? Okay. Right. I intend to put the proposal to accept the officer's recommendation as in your papers, which has been proposed by Councillor Osborne and seconded by Councillor Barrett. I will now ask the officer to do the roll call, and he will explain the procedure from here. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Rob?
So if members could please respond with for, against or abstain. Mr. Dupre, can you just confirm that you're also taking note of the vote?
Hello, Robert. I was just, my internet went down and I was out for a couple of minutes, but I'm back in now. So yes, I will count with you. And sorry, I don't think I'm not a voting member of the committee, so my absence for a very short while is not a legal issue.
Then Rob will declare the result afterwards rather than me. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So, Councillor Sue Ayres.
I approve. I'm for it.
4. Thank you, Chair. Councillor Melanie Barrett.
4.
Councillor Peter Beer.
4.
Councillor David Busby. Councillor John Hinton.
Against.
Councillor Lee Jameson.
Reluctantly vote for.
Well done, Lee.
Councillor Mary McLaren.
4.
Councillor Adrian Osborne.
4.
Councillor Alison Owen. Councillor Lee Parker.
4.
And finally, Councillor Stephen Plum.
Against.
The motion is carried, Chair. The application is approved.
And yes, this is Ian Dupre. I agree. Carried.
And I make it 8-3. Is that correct?
Correct, Chair.
Yes, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Then that motion is carried. That application is finished with. We'll move on, but before we do that, I'll give members a 5-minute break, just in case they need a comfort break, and then we'll move into the second planning application. Are you all happy with that?
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Okay, so let me tell you the time. It'd be 11:43. You've got 5 minutes.
Yes, Chair. Give me 2 seconds and I'll get there. Just moving stuff around on my screen. Okay, let's get the right file up.
Can I just check that you can hear me before I start my presentation?
Yes, we can. You.
Okay, no, that's good. Thank you.
Sam, if you change your presentation view, at the bottom of the. Yep, you got. Yep, that's it. So, right. So, Councillor Suez.
Present.
Councillor Barrett.
Present.
Councillor Beer is here. Councillor Busby.
Present.
Yep, I'm here.
Councillor Hinton.
Yeah.
Councillor Jameson.
Yeah.
Councillor McLaren.
Present.
Councillor Osborne.
Present.
Councillor Owen.
Present.
Councillor Parker.
Present.
And Councillor Plum.
Present.
Councillor McCraw.
Thank you for that.
Sorry,
Yep.
Chair. Just
Yes, I'm present.
brilliant. And
Yes, present.
Sarah Keys from the Parish Council. Could you just confirm that you're also present? And Mr. Edward Gittings and Sophie Gittins.
Yes, I'm here. Edward Gittins.
Yes, present. Sophie Gittins.
Present.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you.
We are ready to go.
Sorry about that, Rob. Thank you very much, all of you, for confirming that. We'll now go to 6B, which is Brantham Place, Manning Tree, Suffolk. I'll ask the case officer, Samantha Summons, to introduce the application to the committee. Over to you, Samantha.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Item 2 can be found on page 41 of your agendas.
I should have said that. Thank you.
That's okay. This is a full planning application seeking permission for conversion of an existing dwelling into 6 apartments and the erection of a further 15 dwellings within the grounds of Brantham Place. Extensive pre-application advice has been carried out for this site. Members may recall carrying out a site inspection on a very, very rainy day last year. The application site is to the north of the village of Brantham. This is the site location plan, and Brantham Place, the dwelling, is centrally in the plot. The site is outside of the built-up area boundary, which you can see marked in brown just here. There is a public right-of-way along the southern boundary that links the site to the village. There is a pedestrian gate currently positioned just here. The Grade 2 star listed church is here, and a separately listed lich gate just here, which is Grade 2. The whole site is within the extension area of the Suffolk Coast and Heath's area of outstanding natural beauty. There are no trees on site. However, the protected trees can be seen just here on the constraints plan, and all are outside of the site. As I've already said, there is a public right-of-way which runs along the southern boundary of the site, and the pathways continue and give access to the school just here, and also access can be gained to the co-op store. The main constraints of the site are that it's outside of the built-up area boundary. The site is within the extension area of the AOMB. It's a heavily wooded site with mature trees. Ecology on the site includes 7 species of bat. There's the Grade 2 listed church, 2-star listed church, and the Grade 2 lich gate. Brantham Place is considered to be a non-designated heritage asset by our heritage team. Church Lane is narrow. Impact on the residents of Cedar's close because the site is actually elevated from the nearby properties on the western boundary. Surface water drainage has been brought up as an issue, and also foul sewage disposal. When members carried out their site inspection, this was the scheme, the original scheme that was put forward. At the moment, there's 2 access points here and here, and it was decided that this would be a pedestrian only, and then the main access point would be on the corner of Church Lane. The houses were to cover the whole site almost, and curved around the site all along this western boundary with Cedar Close. Due to issues that were raised during the consultation process, a number of changes to the layout have occurred. As you can see from this aerial photograph, the southern part of the site is heavily wooded and there is a lot of mature trees in there. The northern half of the site is less densely planted. Historic England felt that building around here and bringing development closer to the church would be detrimental to the setting of the church. The AOMB team felt that the removal of the trees and building along this boundary here, which would open up the wider views across the landscape, would impact the setting of the area of outstanding natural beauty. The agent has come back with a revised scheme, and all of the development has been moved to the northern section, which is less densely wooded. And there was also a little gap in the trees here where 2 further dwellings are proposed. So this heavily wooded area around here, which members may recall walking along, which give views across the landscape, all of those trees are to be kept. As I said before, this northern access point is to become pedestrian only. And just with 1 access point from Church Lane, just here. The pedestrian gate in the southern corner, that is to be retained. And this blue hatching here, that is the proposed open space contribution. Seven affordable dwellings are proposed. These are marked with the stars. The red ones are shared ownership and the blue ones are affordable rent. They have been spread out through the site, so they're not all clumped together, which is quite... there is a good mixture of dwellings on the site. The blue colour indicates 1-bedroom bungalows. The green one is a 2-bedroom bungalow. Yellow are 2-bedroomed houses. Orange, bedroomed house. Purple is 4-bedroomed house, and the red ones are 5-bedroomed houses. So just in summary, there's 2 1-bedroom bungalows, 1 2-bedroom bungalow, 4 2s, 3 3-bedroom houses, 3 4-bed houses, 2 5-bed houses, and the conversion of the existing house into the 6 apartments equates to 2 1-bedroom and 4 2-bedroomed. There's also provided within the conversion specific apartments for over 55s. Looking at the site in a bit more detail, this is the northern tip of the site. These are the affordable dwellings that were highlighted before, and their parking is arranged just here. This one, bungalows that share a boundary with Cedar Close, and just the top of the open space just there. These are the affordable dwellings that are quite close to the existing dwelling that will become the 6 apartments. This is the access point onto Church Lane. This is the southern tip where the pedestrian access onto the right-of-way would be. This one shows the same thing, just with the open space marked on it. And this is the eastern corner, and there is a pond just here, which is the lowest part of the site. This is the open space. It is a slightly different to what members would normally see. There is no play equipment proposed because of the wooded nature of the site and possible damage to the tree roots through its construction. The developer has offered 3 picnic benches and 3 sitting benches. Also pathways, which you may be able to see just marked in the green dotted line, which is proposed to be finished in bark chips. This would allow members of the public to come in, enjoy the space and look over the views to the river. This just shows the benches in a bit more detail. 3 picnic benches just in this corner here, and then 3 seating benches just around that, so that people can look out. This is the tree survey showing the trees to be removed marked in red. As you can see, in this southern part where most of the mature planting is, hardly any trees are to be removed at all. There are sections up here which are shown in red that will be removed, and that does need to be so in order to make the development happen. They are considered to be a lower grade tree. As I say, most of the mature planting is in this. Just moving on to the plans, this is the proposed street scene. Just flicking through the house types, these are the 2-bedroom affordable rent dwellings, 3-bedroom affordable dwelling. This is a market house. This is a market house as well, and this one. 5-bedroom dwelling, and the other 5-bedroom dwelling. These are the 1-bedroom bungalows, and this is the 3-bedroom bungalow. The conversion of the existing house would be like this, with 1 unit here, another one here, and this one here. This is the ground floor, and they would it's proposed that they are for over 55s. They're all at ground floor level, so there would be easy access for people with mobility issues. The market apartments are on the first floor and just split into 3 in the same way as below. The dwelling is considered to be a non-designated asset, heritage asset, sorry, and minimal changes have taken place to the fenestration. The heritage team are happy that this is not detracted from the character of the existing building. Moving on to some photographs of the site. It is quite a difficult site to photograph because of the trees, so most of the photographs are taken from outside of the site looking in, which is the easiest way to sort of show, because the aerial photographs are probably more helpful in showing you what's actually on the site as such. This is the existing northern access point that would become the pedestrian access. This is looking north in Church Lane from that northern access point. And you can see that it is quite a narrow road. This is looking south towards the church, which you can just see the tower there. There's also that second access that will become the main access point to the development just there. This is just going back to that northern access point. These trees here are to be retained, with the affordable housings being set back here and the car parking area back here. This is just showing you the wall that fronts Church Lane. This is the second access point, which will become the vehicular access, and you can just see the dwelling in here. Moving down, so our site is where these trees are, and as you can describe, it is quite an elevated site. These are the houses in Cedar Close. This is taken from the public right-of-way a bit further down towards the village. Cedar Close is here, and these trees are the area that would be the public open space. Moving into Cedar Close, the right-of-way is on the right-hand side of your photograph. Again, these are the trees to be retained in the public open space. Just turning round a bit to see the trees. And this is looking down towards the end of Cedar Close, with the public open space here. You can probably just see the land levels and how elevated the site is compared with Cedar Close. Just here is about where the land lies for our site. This is taken from Cedar Close, looking into the site, and this is the area to be developed. So the right-of-way where the other photographs were taken is on the right-hand side. And you can see that this is a much more open space with poorer quality trees, lots of conifers, and they're not big specimens like in the southern half of the site. There have been concerns raised about residential amenity. This is something that has evolved over the course of the application, and the revised layout has the 3 bungalows along this boundary here. There is a 4-bedroom dwelling proposed, probably just about here. It has an oblique view because it is set up so it would look across the garden of this particular property, but with planting proposed actually in the garden and anything along the boundary edge to be retained, it wasn't felt that first floor windows would cause an overlooking issue that would be detrimental to this property. Just looking a bit further back, just so that you can see a bit more context of the site and its elevated position against Cedar Close. Issues that have arisen during the course of the application include the loss of trees, landscape impact, ecology protection, and also the impact of the setting of the heritage assets. These have been addressed by the amended layout, with all of the development being in the northern section of the site. Foul sewage has been a concern, and Anglian Water have confirmed this, that main sewage does have capacity for the development. The Anglian Water consultation response can be found in your tabled papers. There is no identified need for new housing in Brantham. The need has been addressed by the other developments, one of them quite large, at the southern part of the village. So all of the need has been addressed. The strategic housing team have confirmed, however, that there is currently a district-wide need for 844 homes. 14 of these do have a connection to Brantham, 1, 2 and 3 bedroom properties. Although there is no identified need, the scheme does offer a high percentage of smaller and lifetime homes, of which we know there is a district-wide need. This scheme would offer 7 affordable units. This is a unique site and offers a landscape and ecology management plan on land that is currently without protection of its trees. The public open space is also a benefit and would allow local people to enjoy this special site with long views over the river, and to be within a woodland setting, which would offer a huge amount in terms of biodiversity. This is a full planning application with a developer who is very keen to start building. We have received a signed deliverability statement from the developer who has confirmed commencement within 18 months. Within the first year, it is anticipated to deliver 8 of the dwellings, a further 8 the following year, and then 5 the final year. Although the site is outside of the built-up area boundary, it is well located to access facilities by foot or bicycle within the village, such as the school and the co-op store. All planning issues have been addressed apart from the local need. This application is recommended for approval with conditions set out on page 67. Thank you.
Thank you, Samantha. Right, where are we? Members, are there any points that you'd like clarified by the case officer? Not debate, these are just for clarification. Yes, I've got Councillor Jameson.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Sarah. Could you clarify the open space? Are there trees going to be cut down to create there or not?
No, all of the trees are to be left as they are, and this was one of the reasons that there's no play equipment proposed on the site. Just the picnic benches and the bark chip footpaths leading through the woodland area.
So there will be trees covering the open space then?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, everything stays as it is.
Right, okay, thanks.
There was quite a few trees there, wasn't there, when we walked all around it, with some different parts. Any other questions for clarification? No?
Yes, please.
Oh, sorry, yeah, Barrett, I didn't see that.
Thank you. Can I ask, the wooded area on the south side, what arrangement as they go forward is there for retaining that as a wooded area? I mean, what protection is there against that being developed?
There is a landscape and ecology management plan. We do need some further details, which we can have that by condition. That is one of the recommended conditions in my report, and that does protect the whole of the site, not just the southern part, but the whole site in general, mainly because of the mature trees, but also the amount of ecology that is actually on the site.
Thank you. There's no one else wanting to questions of clarification, so we'll now go to the public speakers, which is the parish representative Sarah Keys. You have 3 minutes in which to address the committee, so if you'd like to start now, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for giving me the time to speak to you today. On behalf of Brantham Parish Council, I'd like to inform the committee that the Parish Council recommends that this application is refused. The Parish Council shares many of the original concerns that were highlighted by the Babergh District Council Planning Policy Team, stated that the site was unsuitable. Reasons for this included that there was unsuitable access to the site from Church Lane. Although there is a bus service located within 800 metres, there is inadequate pedestrian access to this service. The site is located within a proposed extension to the area of outstanding natural beauty and will create a significant impact on this landscape. The council has particular concern about the impact of the development upon a number of trees and their setting, and there would also be historic setting impacts and potential archaeological impacts. The proposal doesn't sensitively integrate with the existing pattern and form of development in the local area and is at odds in the wider spatial context. In addition, Brantham Parish Council has concerns about the available local infrastructure, particularly the necessary additional arrangements. In the event that this planning permission should be granted, however, Brantham Parish Council would be keen to see that this application demonstrates a viable commercial interest from a current provider of social housing who is prepared to support that element of the project. The Parish Council has concerns about the gardens of the dwellings that edge properties on Cedar Close, and in the event that the application is granted, suggests that these borders should retain the trees and planting to provide a visible boundary between the properties. Parish Council notes that plots 9 to 12 are of sufficient area that they might permit future splitting of these plots in order to achieve back developments. The Council would request that in the event that the application is successful, these plots are maintained in future solely for the use of the housing shown on the plan. The Council suggests that a covenant by the developer for this purpose would probably be the best way to achieve this. The Council notes that the proposed layout leaves 3 open areas of amenity or landscape use, and the Council requests that if permission is granted, those are protected as such, would not be available for further erosion of the proposed area of outstanding natural beauty landscaping. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah Keys. Members, is there any questions that you wish to ask the public speaker? Councillor Jameson, sorry.
No, sorry, no.
Oh, right. No other questions there?
Chair, could I just jump in? Councillor Parker.
Councillor Parker, right, yep.
Sorry, I couldn't type fast enough, Chair. Sorry, I do apologise.
No, that's fine.
Ms Keys, hello, good morning or good afternoon now. Could I what engagement the applicant has had with the parish council over this proposal?
The applicant visited the village during one of our planning committee meetings and spoke to the public and the council at that opportunity.
Thank you. Any other members wish to ask any questions? No? Okay, thank you very much, Sarah Keys. Right, we'll now, there's no objector now, so we'll now go down to the agent, Sophie Gittins. You also have 3 minutes in which to address the committee, and your time starts now.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, members. The proposals for Brantham Place are the culmination of some 3 years of liaison with local residents and your officers in a scheme which would deliver a development providing unique benefits for both new and existing residents of Brantham Village in the form of a mix of housing within an attractive wooded landscape, including public open space and picnic area. The scheme has been given detailed and considered scrutiny by your officers, receiving positive support through both the pre-application and processes. The development has been carefully adapted to reflect consultation responses from both the council and local residents. Officers have found the scale of the development to be appropriate for the village, and the tailored inclusion of apartments for the over 55s, shared ownership and affordable properties would be a much welcomed asset in meeting social objectives. Brantham Place is set within an established wooded parkland, and your officers have concluded that the refined proposals integrate well into the landscape whilst protecting the woodland and the site's ecological reserve. The layout of the scheme provides new footpath links through attractive woodland and public open space to join the existing footpath network, ensuring the development connects well to village services. In order to manage and enhance the natural environment of Brantham Place, great care has been taken to ensure the whole of the woodland to the south of the site is retained and sensitively managed as a key feature in the landscape, and to preserve the setting for the church. The provision of a landscape ecological management plan will make a major contribution towards rural amenity by governing the long-term management of the wooded and open areas, ensuring that this part of the landscape and potential AONB will be enhanced and preserved in perpetuity. Whilst there will be some loss of trees to implement the development, the majority to be removed are either leylandii or diseased elms, which have been evaluated by our consultants and the council's tree officer, and no objection has been raised given the type or condition of those identified for removal. Indeed, great care has been taken in formulating the landscaping proposals to ensure as many trees as possible remain in situ, and that further tree planting and long-term management will safeguard and enhance the site's amenity and create a sense of place. The proposed layout protects the amenity of established dwellings adjoining the site to the west, avoiding overlooking and loss of privacy to existing residents. The southern 3 plots closest to Cedar Close are bungalows, with minimum back-to-back distances of over 30 metres through periphery trees, whilst the house on plot 12 is some 40 metres distant, all well in excess of design guide standards. Retention of existing trees and strengthened boundary planting will further reduce intervisibility. To summarise, therefore, the proposals have evolved to ensure that the development is sensitive to its environment and will deliver important tailored social and amenity benefits for Brantham. These benefits will be secured by means of a Section 106 agreement. I therefore respectfully request members' support for the officer recommendation of conditional approval in this case. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Spot on time. Right, members, is there any questions you wish to ask the agent? I think Councillor Owen. Alison Owen, you've got a question?
Yeah, just on slide 33 for the over 55s on the first floor, have they got? Is that on the ground floor? Is that only for the over 55s, or have on the upper floors over 55s as well? Just that having apartments on the top floor, which
hang on, Alison. It's a question to the agent. I think your question to the agent is the ground floor apartments for only over 55s and the upstairs are not for 55s?
Yeah, that's what the question is. Sorry.
Yeah. So can you help on that, agent?
If possible, could I direct that question to Edward Gittins, who's the actual sort of agent for the application, and he'll be able to handle that point for you.
That's fine.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yes, good afternoon. Yes, yes, that's absolutely right. The ground floor of the Brantham place will be dedicated for the over 55s. So basically, they're designed to be older residents and potentially disabled residents as well. They're designed for that specific purpose. Then there are sort of free market apartments above that. So the over 55s provision is on the ground floor, as you suggest. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McClellan.
Thank you. Good morning, Sophie, or good afternoon, sorry. I'm a bit confused with this debate about the sewage. Can you explain to me what the problem is with the link with Anglian water systems?
I can actually answer that one. I'll direct that to Ted Gittins. Basically, there's no problem. There's a manhole on site that's been identified. Originally, it was considered Anglian Water weren't able to provide their response ahead of the submission of the application, so it was left open to try and establish during the course of the application what the solution would be if there was capacity. But there is a manhole cover on the site, and Anglian Water have confirmed that there is available capacity in the system for the development.
Can I just follow that? Yes. So are you saying that there will be no need for septic tanks on site?
No, it doesn't appear to be the case, no, given Anglian Water's response.
That didn't come out in the report, actually, did it? It was a bit unclear.
I think it was a late response, unfortunately, from Anglian Water, but Sam could probably clarify that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Busby.
Yeah, can I? When we visited the site, I felt this was a very unique location, very unique setting, and I felt it was almost impossible to find a development that could fit in harmony with it. I have to say that the developer has done a remarkable job in allaying a lot of my fears and in the redesign. I think it's very sensitively done. The question I have is that there was a lot of comments in the report about police concerns in terms of the parking and security, whether the developer has taken any of those on board.
Agent.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I can take that. Yeah, I think it's an architect design scheme which has considered all of the various sort of elements. That, you know, obviously it's a well integrated scheme in terms of parking. And yeah, any sort of security details can be applied for as part of conditions with secure by design certificates, etc. At that point. So I hope that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Councillor Jameson.
Councillor Busby just asked the exact question I was going to ask.
Right, we'll move on then.
While I'm here,
yep.
I'd say, what is the applicant doing in terms of environmental sustainability with regard to the housing? Are they what aspects are they putting in, like renewable?
It is a question to the agent.
Yeah, sorry, that sort of thing. What are they doing there?
Have you got electric car pints and things like that?
Yes, those sorts of details can be provided again, and that's something that can be implemented by condition should members wish to see it. The building regulation stage of the development will sort of make sure that the development adheres to appropriate environmental standards sort of wherever possible. So yes, that would be stage should be granted.
I think I'm right in saying that I think the committee generally likes to see electric charging point stages or made available on site where it's possible. So if there isn't any, can that just be looked at with the officers? Would you be happy with that, agents?
Yeah, absolutely. We'd have no objection to that whatsoever. And yeah, happy to head in that direction as sort of, a responsible developer moving forward. I think it's going to be more widespread.
Thank you. Any other question? Councillor Barrett?
Thank you. Hello, Sophie. Is there the apartments? Do they have their own garden space that's just for their apartment, or is it communal?
I believe it's communal, but given sort of the site is situated within the sort of a very sort of heavily landscaped area, and sort of they sort of open space amenity benefits sort of on their doorstep, which is obviously quite unusual for apartments in this day and age, especially going through the current climates. Sort of it's a real benefit for them to have access on their doorstep to that.
Thank you. Any other questions to the agent? No? Thank you very much. Then we'll move on. I'll just check with the officers. Was there anything you picked up in the questions you wanted to clarify?
Only going back to Councillor Busby's point about the unique setting, and this really is a site-specific layout that has come about by looking at the consultee responses that we have, particularly from the AOMB team, because I know that that's something that is of great concern to Brantham Parish Council. And, the AOMB team are actually really happy with the scheme now, and they don't feel that it will impact because this development here sits between existing development here and here, so this more open area that gives the wider views into the landscape is all protected. But that's my only point, really. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move to the ward member, Councillor McCaw. If you'd like to address the committee, you have 5 minutes. Okay.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. Has it really been 3 years? I've been in two minds on this application from the start. There certainly were benefits, but a list of local concerns were provided in consultation, and I'm glad to say that many of them have been addressed and in the evolution of the application. And the applicant has been increasingly responsive throughout to all these points. As it's been stated as a dominant location, the site is very visible from the river, from Cedar Close and the Pippins, as you were shown in the photographs. The reduction of the impact on heritage, on trees, on the bat population, the provision of a public open space, and the parkland set into the benefit, I think, of the application. It's well designed for the site. The point is, how well does it interact with the rest of the area and Brantham in general? I'd particularly like, though, I think the report itself, and I'd like to give my thanks to Samantha Summers for delivering such a fair and well-balanced report. Everything you need is contained within that report. Let's look at the individual context. The Parish Council and the public have come up with very, very good points. As I say, most of those have been addressed, but there still remain one or two I'd like to nail down. The amenity area being secured for the future, the open nature of the frontage and the area near the church. It would be important, I believe, to have that secured in a covenant that it not be developed in future, much as has been mentioned in the Parish Council's comments on plots 7 to 9, I think it was. As far as the consultees go outside, a lot of positives are pointed out, but there are some objections, and holding objections in the context of this. Our own planning policy team would not consider this a suitable site, and they have similar reservations on access on church. Now, members on visiting may recall that we ourselves were blocked from reaching the site by one of our own refuse lorries, and I think that indicates how narrow the road can be there. And it's not a footpath access to the main road by any means. You are literally dodging traffic all the way along it. But all these points said, there are 3 possible ways of looking at this. I do think that these screening boundary treatments, the various provisions, I would say all the consultation should be considered. So come down to the options. Policy CS1 is met. CS2, with its requirement for a justified need, it is outside the settlement boundaries. Are there any exceptional circumstances? I think that has to be asked. And as far as CS11 goes, I'm convinced by the proven local need. A local needs assessment would indicate, in fact, that much of it can be satisfied by a nearby permission granted by for this very council at Gravel Pit Lane, at the other end of the road where the bus goes, which is, supposedly only a short distance away. Well, there is already a provision for affordable housing there. So that would be the options for refusal. If you're inclined to grant permission, I would like you to make some changes to the recommendation. Recommendation 1 lists a number of points that referred to again in recommendation 4. What I'd like to suggest is that the conditions in recommendation 1 and 2 be covered by recommendation 4. That would then provide a measure of security on all the points made by the various consultees, many of which I have heard answered by the applicant today, and the report, as I say, has pointed that all together. On that basis, I think you can probably say that this site is as well designed for the site and in relation to the community to address those concerns. On that basis, I think the planning balance probably falls of approval, and I'm very grateful to see this site not spoilt completely. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Alistair. Members, have you got any questions for the ward member? I don't think so. No. Okay, thank you very much. There's no questions for the ward member, so we now go into debate. Who'd like to start? Councillor Ayres? Hello?
Hello, no, it's my thing off. No, not at the moment. I'll listen to other people.
That's fine, that's fine. Well, I think happy to start, right? That's Kaka.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and just say thank you to Councillor McCraw as well for his, as ever, very eloquent presentation there as well. But could I just ask of Mr. Summers, please, Sam, I just need some clarification then around this business of need. So the report is quite clear that that the need for Brantham has been met. So I think what you're saying is, despite the fact that the need has, are you saying that that need is a minimum, and so therefore that there's no need to stop at that point, and this is a worthy application, for want of a better phrase, to consider additional?
I can confirm that there is no need in Brantham. That need has already been given by the other developments. The planning committee have already given permission for. So there is no need. So it does fail that point in CS11, just to make that clear to members.
Thank you. Councillor Barrett, did I miss you?
Yes, I was going to
I'll take you next, okay?
Start a discussion, really, and I think it's interesting. It just shows the difference that it can make with a well-designed space, because it seems that there is a little bit more support for this than sometimes we do here, where people are concerned about the impact. But the impact of this seems to be at an acceptable level. And it seems like it would provide a really attractive place to live. I mean, those over 55s apartments, I think if they just had a very small outdoor space of their own, but then had the ability to enjoy the wider public area without the need to maintain it, then I think it's going to be a really welcome addition to the available housing stock. And I don't know whether the other needs that have been met in the village have catered for the that group of population, the over 55s, albeit that there's only three units. But I think this is a nice application. I really haven't got any reservations about it, and interested.
Thank you, Councillor Hinton. Councillor Hinton.
Thank you. You're missing out. I thought Lee Parker was in front of me.
I took him before Maloney by mistake.
Okay, right. Sorry. Yeah, it's a difficult one really, because as the ward member says, the way that the development has been proposed in the grounds of this large house is very attractive. I have to say that based on the indicated drawings that the officer put, the developer has really shot himself in the foot by producing some rather ugly looking properties to actually fill those, the actual layout within those within that area. But I would come back, if I may, to the point made on page 45 by Suffolk Police, which they skirted over by saying that there will be a security letter or something or other put forward. The police have got severe reservations about the layout of parking arrangements and where they should be. For the police in our part of Suffolk, along this what we call bandit country along the Essex border, to be worried about something is quite unusual, because normally they're quite happy to let people claim off their insurance companies. But to have this is as a concern, I think rather weighs against the proposal. I'm glad to see that Anglian Water have suddenly decided they have actually got capacity there. Whereas on that page, same page 45, they actually said, we note that the developers not proposing to connect to Anglian Water's net. Well, that implies that they were going to reply and say that they had no comment. So why have they suddenly decided to say that they have got the capacity if they want to come on board? It seems a bit of there's been obviously some crossed communication there somewhere. I'm also glad to hear that there is no need within Brantham, because it's been met by existing approvals. Because on page 61, where they're talking about local needs assessment, the document did not address the actual needs within Brantham. And then the strategic housing team have confirmed that the district-wide need is 844 applicants. Well, that's 2 years' worth of total housing target. So there's an awful lot of need out there somewhere, but is it need or is it just desire? All these 1 and 2 bedroom plots, if we come back to what Councillor Malvesi was saying on the previous application about COVID-19, etc., there's going to be some mental health problems developing if these people are isolated in single bedroom properties, because there's nobody else there for them to talk to if we have another shutdown as severe as we've had just recently. So there are quite a few questions that prop up on that. The questions that aren't addressed within this report, I have to come back to one of my old chestnuts, and there'll probably be some groans from the other members, because they usually are. Healthcare. East Berkholt Surgery serves Brantham, in inverted commas, because they have 12,000 people on their list and only 6 doctors. So a lot of people have decamped to Manningtree and even to Holbrook and Dedham for health service, but they are all full up as well. Health services are full. NHS have not commented this particular one. When they comment, they usually talk about increasing capacity, but they are talking about increasing building capacity, not increasing GP capacity. And we all know that GPs are short across the whole country. So we've got to bear that in mind as well. The education contributions presumably are for the primary school in Brantham, which is sort of halfway down the hill. They've got some porta cabins in the grounds of there now. So, well, 66,000 is going to contribute, I don't know. Secondary school expansion, 68,000. Well, that's at East Berkholt. Does that 68,000 cover the fact that the county council tried to take away the bus service that would take people from Brantham to East Berkholt? Sixth form expansion, presumably, is Suffolk 1 on the outskirts of Ipswich. But there's nothing to say that those people in that estate, if they wanted to go for sixth form education, wouldn't nip over the border. I live in, as you know, in East Berkholt, and 2 of my 3 boys went to sixth form college in Colchester. So, all right, Suffolk 1 didn't exist in those days, but there's a bit of a woolly area around infrastructure capacity. Church Lane, I would agree with Councillor McGraw, is a disaster when it comes to motor vehicle transport. I think it was put there when people went to church by horse or walked, because certainly it's not wide enough really to sustain extensive vehicular traffic. Really, the county council have just sort of glossed over that particular fact of the infrastructure by just saying that the junction onto the AE 137 is hasn't had many recorded accidents. Well, it's hardly an endorsement for our highways and infrastructure policy. So I've got some severe concerns about this in terms of the detail, and I would like to see a lot more detail in the if we're going to recommend approval within the conditions that are recommended here, to tie down some of these facts rather than just leave them in the rather woolly ether that we seem to be doing at the moment.
Thank you, John, for that. Very useful. 4 points which I've picked up, which perhaps Samantha can try and answer. It was highways, schools, National Health Service and police. Could I just say, Samantha, on the police matter, we do ask them for comments. They don't often, and in this case they have made these views. Is there any way that surveillance cameras could be installed in a recommendation if we were going down the road that we were minded to approve it? Anyway, perhaps you can answer all those points.
Okay, so health and education, that will be covered by SIL payments. It is up to Suffolk County Council to put those bids in. Healthcare is one of those interesting ones, and the NHS really only get involved on the really major developments. This is very, very minor, really. It's 21 dwellings, so they wouldn't actually comment on an application of this size.
Okay.
In terms of the police, we hardly ever get a comment back from them that is positive. That their job is to look out for the problems of a site. Their particular concerns about parking, I can understand their points. However, on a site like this where there's an awful lot of trees, we do have to be mindful we can park vehicles without them compacting soil over the roots and therefore damaging them. So there's certain things on this site that probably are not ideal, but it has been designed site specific. So yeah, in terms of surveillance cameras, I think that there's always an issue about who's going to be in charge of that, who's going to be watching, and some people don't like to be filmed. So that brings problems of its own.
But it is purely the safety aspect, and you say there's lots of trees. Well, people can hide behind trees.
They can.
So, and I think the average car that would be parking in some of these areas wouldn't cause a lot. But anyway, that's just a few.
Yeah, and was there something else as well that you mentioned?
Highways was the last one.
Highways.
The narrow road, but they say it's okay.
Yeah, they were quite happy with the use of Church Lane. As I say, it's quite a small development, so they didn't anticipate that traffic would cause a problem in terms of highway safety. But of course, on the other hand, I think because they've actually asked for £1,000 contribution towards the improvement of the public right-of-way, they were anticipating that most people, if they had school children, would actually walk down to the school because it is so close to the site.
Right, thank you. Right, any other members wanted to comment? Because we're in debate. No?
Hello, Peter.
Yes.
Yeah, it sounds like It sounds like we might be moving towards a vote. If you haven't got anyone wanting.
I've got no one else, and no one's made any proposals one way or the other.
Well, I will propose then that we vote to accept this proposal.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that, please? Well, in the absence, I will second it.
Yes, I'll second it.
Well, I've already done it now.
All right, then.
Councillor Busby, I'll accept you as the seconder. Right. So that's a proposal for and by Councillor Barrett and seconded by Councillor Busby. The Officer Russell wishes to make a comment at this point.
Thank you, Chair. Just to confirm, early in the debate, mention was made of the electric charging point. So I just didn't know if you want to put that as an extra condition.
I think that's very good. Yes, I would like to propose that is a condition where possible. I mean, one can't be unreasonable about it, but I'm sure they could make all strenuous efforts where they can get it. I see Samantha is saying it already is. Samantha, would you like to comment?
Yes, sorry, Chair. That would be covered by the last condition that is listed in the report, sustainable efficiency measures.
Right, yeah.
That was the point I was going to make, Mr. Chairman, that I think the overall sustainability criteria for modern developments would cover things like electric charging points and solar panels where applicable.
Well done, but not surveillance cameras. Right, okay. Councillor.
Yeah, I mean, I've seconded it, but there are a lot of conditions in the recommendation. Mm-hmm. Just ask Sam how confident she is that we can achieve all of those conditions.
Yeah, quite a lot of them are about the landscape and the ecology. So yes, yeah, I'm confident that all of those are fine.
Right. Thank you. Well, there's no one else wanting to ask questions in the chatter box, so I'm assuming there isn't any others. Then I intend to put the proposal that was proposed by, I've forgotten already, Councillor Barrett and seconded by Councillor Busby. All those in favour of the officer's recommendations as laid out in your papers.
Excuse me one moment, Councillor.
Right.
And can I request that we record people's votes?
Yep. I was about to come to that.
Because I am concerned that we haven't approved very much, albeit that we have this morning, but we haven't approved very much lately since February. And I'm a bit concerned about this. So I think this is called for now, as we've only approved 5 since February.
Well, the next part of what I was going to say was that I was going to ask the officer Rob to do the roll call for voting, so that way then they are listed down, aren't they, Rob?
Not quite, Chair. There's two, because if I can clarify on that point. So under the Constitution, the current way we do it with the roll call, as laid out in the temporary arrangements from the monitoring officer, allow us to do a vote by roll call. By doing that, it does not mean that the names of which way members vote are recorded. It's in the same way as a recorded vote. So if each individual member can request that their vote is recorded in the minutes as such, or there is the possibility of I think it's a proposer, a seconder, and 3 other members of the committee, if they so wish. Then all of it will be a recorded vote in the same way that we would do, say, the budget or any other one.
So,
just to clarify there,
Councillor Barrett. Thank you. Yep, that's helpful. Councillor Barrett, if you want to make a proposal that we have a vote on this, then you can, and I'll see if we get 3 other people to support you.
Okay. Yes, I'd like to propose that.
Okay. Do I have a seconder?
Yes, I don't mind seconding that. I think everything should be recorded.
Good. Right, then it's proposed and seconded. Oh, I need 2 more, don't I?
Yeah, okay. You need 3
I will
more,
support
sorry,
it, Chairman.
Yeah, we had Mary and myself. That makes 4 of us. Is that right?
Hold on, Chair. So we've got Alice. So Councillor Barrett has proposed it. Councillor Alison has seconded it. Councillor Mary McLaren supports that point, as does the Chair, Peter Beer. We need 1 more person, Chair, to make 5.
Oh, right. Somebody else? No? Right.
Go on then.
Oh, okay. Councillor Busby, well done. That's 5 others then.
Yep, so this will be...
Mr. Chairman, Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Yeah. Could I just ask Councillor Barrett why she referred to the fact that we'd approved so few and therefore we had to start sort of saying who'd voted which way and what?
Well, I don't think we need to get into the recorded vote and proposed and seconded, and she's now got 3 people that have agreed to it. I don't think we need to go down that road.
With respect, Chair, I would support Councillor Hinton's question there, actually. And the question is, are we talking about this vote or every vote?
I think we're talking about this vote. I'm certainly only supporting this vote, but Councillor Barrett, do you wish to comment or clarify?
I think it could become a matter of public interest, and I think it should be available to the public.
On this occasion?
Well, yeah, on this occasion, certainly. I'll have to decide what I do in the future, won't we? Yeah.
Thank you.
Peter, sorry. When I seconded it, I thought if we're going to record every vote. You know, if we're going to do it, we'll do it properly.
Well, no, it's on this particular nation.
Yeah.
At the moment, it has to be made. Yes, please. Yes, please.
So the recorded vote is only there's, as I say, there's only 2. There's the specific one for the budget which has to be done, but for it, if you want a recorded vote, it has to be done on each individual case as a request, because the current procedure in the Constitution is that it is not recorded how each individual member votes. If it was to be a change to the Constitution to say it was, then that's what we do in this circumstance, but currently the system does not work in that sense.
So it's on this occasion only, okay? Thank you. So you're still happy to pursue that then, Alison? Thank you. So now I'll ask Rob to do the roll call for the proposal to accept the officer's recommendation, and by answering, your votes will be recorded. Rob?
Thank you, Chair. So if you could please respond with 4 against abstain. So Councillor Sue Ayres?
For.
Councillor Melanie Barrett?
For.
Councillor Peter Beer?
For.
Councillor David Busby?
For.
Councillor John Hinton?
For.
Councillor Lee Jameson?
For.
Councillor Mary McLaren?
For.
Councillor Adrian Osborne?
For.
Councillor Alison Owen?
Yeah, for.
Councillor Lee Parker?
For.
And Councillor Stephen Plum?
For.
Sound like that was unanimous.
Yes, Chair, that was unanimous.
Yeah, and this is the legal officer agreeing with that, yeah.
Well done, thank you very much.
Okay. So let's record the vote then, Chair. I'm being facetious.
Right. Well, I think we've got to the end of the applications for today, members. I think that's everything. I'd like to thank you for your attendance and bearing with us and your patience. We've got through another one. Thank you very much.
Chair.
Goodbye. Right.